episode 230 of Feeling a Draft. And I have had several co-hosts going back to 1990 something, maybe. No, wait, what year was it? No, I'm exaggerating slightly. 2003, I think, or 4. Probably was like our first episode. And I've worked with everybody from Greg Strahan, who had to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning to do it because he was in England, not London, but he was somewhere else in England, Dorset. I apologize, Craig. I don't remember exactly where in England. Then later, I did it with Steve Martin, who was in Amity, Maine, which is at least in the United States, but apparently they got 4 or 5 feet of snow at times, so I guess he had free time when he was snowed in. And then I started going a little more big time when I was paired up with Ben Albright, who many of you who are on Twitter, particularly like draft or football Twitter, know Ben Albright, who's now a big-time guy in Colorado doing sports radio. A shout out to Ben Albright, who promises he'll come back for a show someday. I'm going to take you up on that, Ben. And then, of course, I had Alex Brown as my co-host, who now is the director of football recruiting for Southern Methodist University, after having a very successful run at Houston, where he helped get Ed Oliver and what's his name, the defensive back the Raiders drafted from Houston, the corner. A bunch of good players at Houston. I used to be able to roll them off. And the quarterback turned Greg
Ward Jr.
Quarterback turned wide receiver with the
Greg
Eagles.
Ward Jr. Greg Ward Jr.
Yes, there you go. Yes, was one of the guys that he recruited to Houston. But before he moved on to SMU, and then I had Jim Coburn, who will be coming back. Like Jim has come back since, and Jim has a fantastic bunch of data tools. So if you're into like dynasty football and stuff like that, follow Jimmetrics on Twitter. He's got some great stuff. And in that, and then Kofi, right? Kofi Sabuya, who you'll meet Kofi at some point. Kofi has other things going on in his life, but he'll still be able to help us on the back end. He'll help us with some lining up guests and emailing people, things like that. But in that illustrious tradition, going back over 15 years, we now have, stepping into it, a person who was probably still using sippy cups or something when I first started doing this show. But a very exciting young man, Brock Viera. And for those who are not familiar with you, introduce yourself briefly, and then we can dig into this season, our preview for college football.
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to just get started and talk about the draft prospects for this upcoming draft. But my name is Brock. I run a page called Midnight Sports Today. You can find us online, midnightsportstoday.org, or on Twitter, MNS Today. Essentially, I just talk about all kinds of sports, especially football. That's the game I love. I'm really excited to talk about this year's prospects as much as I did last year's. And just a fun fact, if you started the show in 2003, I was 4 years old when that happened. So just, don't want to show you age to you, but again, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just happy to get started.
Well, I am happy to get started. Less happy to hear that you were 4 years old when I started doing the show. But let's dig into this very exciting draft class. So everyone in the whole planet seems to have decided who the number one prospect is in this draft class. So I'm going to spend almost no time talking about him because what's the fun? I mean, plus other people will be talking about him to death. I want to spend time on guys who are probably going to go later in the draft, and even guys who might even be undrafted. Like, I've sort of hung my hat on guys like that, the Donald Parhams of the world, and Luis Perez, right? AAC, and XFL legend, I guess now.
AAF, XFL,
USFL legend, Luis Perez, who I've had on my show on a couple of occasions, who, of course, one of those amazing stories, didn't play high school football at all, started playing in junior college, and it played youth ball until he was about 13, 14, then became an amazing bowler, bowled multiple 300 perfect games, and then falls back in love with football while in junior college and parlays that into a really terrific career at Texas A&M Commerce, and now he's a professional quarterback. I love stories like that. So while other people are sort of pounding to death, the top 10 prospects in this draft class, that's just not my thing. If that's what you're into, there's people doing that. So check them out. They're great too. But our focus is on guys you may not already know every single thing about. And some of them you may know nothing about. I'm hoping to introduce you to prospects. That's sort of what Feeling a Draft has been about since it's first been around. And I recently have seen some of our early guests, none of whom are still playing, but are being successful. I saw Clay Harbor, who is now a broadcaster, I guess now. Some tweets from him. Austin Lane is a guy that was on the show in the early days. We've had a bunch of guys on back in the day. And actually, I take it back. There is a guy who's still playing who I've had on the show back in the early days. And in fact, he might be a Hall of Famer one day. Geno Atkins is by far the most well-known. But people forget, he was a fourth-round draft pick. So we look back now and say, Geno Atkins, that's a big name dude. But I was one of those fighting the perception because he was 277 pounds in his senior year at Georgia. And so there was still this perception he was too small, which I thought was silly because look at him. I mean, and of course he's bigger now. But so that's probably the biggest name prospect I've ever had on. But my focus isn't on big name prospects. A shout out to Lucas Crow, who apparently has been tearing it up in practice, and I think he's going to be a successful NFL tight end. So our focus on those guys. Day 3, undrafted free agent, and maybe a sprinkling of day 2 guys, but guys that, like I said, aren't already household names, but we think have real talent. So I'm going to ask you for a short list of your favorite underrated prospects, and then if you have some overrated ones, we'll get to those next. But who are some of your favorite underrated prospects in this draft class?
Yeah, well, I just want to get started with the quarterback position in general, especially coming off of a draft that was fairly underwhelming when it comes to quarterback prospects. I feel that we're going to have a more overwhelming quarterback prospect list this year. Obviously, we're going to talk about the C.J. Strouds and the Bryce Youngs and all those great names, but in reality, when you look at the full body of work of this quarterback class, there's a lot of great talent that's going to be available, especially day 2 and day 3. I want to kick it off with a guy out of Fresno State named Jake Haener. That's a guy that both Bill and I are very, very high on. I mean, when you talk about a guy that has it all, he really does have it. He has that Fresno State Jeff Tedford mold. Of course, Tedford did come back to Fresno State, so he will be getting tutored under him, as well as him being a student of Kalen DeBoer, who is now at Washington. With that being said, he's a guy who can make every throw, makes good reads. He's really only had one fairly awful game in his career, and that was at Hawaii, a game he did lose to the University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. However, in that game as well, they should have won if his receiver didn't just let the ball fly through his hand into the DB's arms. With that being said, once again, he's very Derek Carr in his frame, in his throwing motion, things of that nature. But that's not a bad thing, especially when you get to the modern NFL. And that's a guy that's going to slip, I would say, into day 2, or possibly even day 3. I don't see it happening, probably 3rd round at the latest. But that's a guy I really want to keep an eye out for. Another guy is out of Boston College. I'm going to mispronounce his name for sure. Phil Jerkovich. Please correct my pronunciation.
Former Notre Dame quarterback who transferred. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And in typical Notre Dame fashion, you get better once you leave. Shout out to Greg Richter, huge Notre Dame fan, and he's definitely going to take offense to that. With that being said, he's a guy that has all the tools to be a great pocket passing quarterback. He's a dude that's really been laying under the radar in the ACC. But as we look at the ACC right now, it's really up for the taking. Obviously, Kenny Pickett was a cream of the crop in that class. It seems like Sam Hartman is ready to take that next step to be one of the top dudes in that conference. Possibly DJ Uiagalelei could make a resurgence. I think Jerkovich is definitely one of those underrated guys that because he goes to a school like Boston College, he's not going to have a lot of eyes on. Moving on to the running back position, a guy I've been very high on for a very long time that's finally getting the recognition he deserves is Deuce Vaughn out of Kansas State. He is very short and very small, but my goodness, does he run with aggression? Does he run with intelligence? And does he make plays both in space and also trying to find that hole? He's one of those guys that you're going to get lost in a zone blocking scheme. And if you can line up plays like San Francisco, per se, he's going to make a lot of noise. I expect at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage from this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go over 1,500, at least in both passing and rushing. With that being said, because he goes again to a school like Kansas State, he's going to fly under the radar. But Kansas State is in a position to make a New Year's Six Bowl if they play the cards right, because their schedule isn't daunting. And by having him, and it's Adrian Martinez, the Martinez at Kansas State now, right?
It's very confusing. I know. They've had a bunch of guys at Nebraska because Taylor Martinez, Corona, California, no relation, Corona, California quarterback, but eerily similar. It was just so weird. It's like, because I researched it, like, are these guys related? Apparently not. But very similar in a bunch of ways. And Kansas State is one of those programs that people forget about, right?
Yeah.
And then they win 9 games. Like, oh, Kansas State, And for a long time, obviously, it was Bill Snyder, who seemed to be old forever. Because Bill Snyder was not a young man when I started following his career. So I remember he was a defensive coordinator.
Iowa, right?
Yeah, right. And a few other places, too. And I remember thinking, man, is this guy ever going to get a chance to coach? It's like, maybe he's just like Bud Foster. One of those guys just satisfied being a defensive coordinator forever. And then it's like, oh, he took a head coaching job. Kansas State. Dun, 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 because you have to remember, Kansas State at the time was one of the worst Power 5 programs in the nation. Ironically, the 2 worst at the time I'm talking about, the 2 worst Power 5 programs in the country, both had very similar color schemes. It was Northwestern and Kansas State, and not always even in that order. And they both were awful. They both would lose all but maybe 1 or 2 games almost every season, it seemed like, for a while there. At one point, Northwestern had the second longest losing streak in modern college football history. And Kansas State was not far behind. And so when I heard he was going there, I was like, oh, well, at least he could say he was a head coach. I mean, I remember thinking that, like, oh, well, at least he got a chance to be a head coach. And obviously things turned out a little differently than I expected. But you have to remember, nobody had won at Kansas State since the early 70s, probably. It had been a while since Kansas State had been good. Lynn Dickey, I think it was Lynn Dickey, had a couple of good years there. I mean, the quarterback, he wasn't the coach, but Kansas State had been bad for a very long time. And he did it. I mean, he managed to turn that program around. It's one of the most difficult programs to turn around any place, and he did it.
Yeah, no, he did. He did an incredible job. Growing up as a college football fan, Kansas State was never bad because they were winning Fiesta Bowls or in Big 12 championship games. They were winning Big 12 championships. And then obviously they had that resurgent year with Colin Klein where he went to the Heisman ceremony. Menzel won. So I do want to Snyder and also say to all the Nebraska fans watching, I'm sure it must suck to have your story program watch both Kansas State and Kansas win BCS or New Year's Six bowl games while you're still stuck in Lincoln. But besides that, I think Deuce Vaughn is going to be an excellent running back in the NFL. And that's a guy that probably going to slip because of his size. And considering that running backs aren't valued as much as they were in the draft in general anyway, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to really break out onto the scene. When it comes to wide receivers, a guy that I'm really high on is Keyshawn Bhutan out of LSU. Quite frankly, he's my wide receiver 1 at the moment. I know we're not really talking about top 10, but that's a guy I think is going to sink
throw him out there.
Yeah, but
you have him above guys like Smith and Jigba?
I do, because I think at this moment, Smith and Jigba, who is an excellent receiver, I want to make that very clear. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I do believe he has limitations to him, and I'm not sure he's able to play outside. I think he's a purely straight slot receiver in the NFL. I think Bhutan can run a complete route tree. He can run from any position. He can make any catch. And he's been very underrated because his rise came with LSU. I don't want to use the word fall because LSU hasn't fallen. I mean, they had Brian Kelly, so yes, they have. But during those last 2 head coach O years after the national championship, his rise is when they were just kind of more mediocre. So that's why he hasn't gotten
the attention. I mean, it puts everything in perspective. So I mentioned Kansas State earlier. At the time, he was hired right before Thanksgiving in 1988 and begins coaching in the 89 season. When Bill Snyder takes over that team, Kansas State had a cumulative record in its history. It played football for 93 years when he arrives. They were 299 and 510 for a 37% winning percentage. That was the most losses of any team in Division I. I didn't say Power 5. In Division I at that time, they were number 1 in losses. They'd only been in 1 bowl game. They've been playing football for 93 years, Brock. They had been to 1 bowl game had last won a conference title in 1934. They had 4 winning seasons in the previous 54 years and 2 in the last 34 years. And at the time that he took over the job, they were 0-26-1 from October 26th of 1986 to when he was hired on the 24th of November of 1988. I know you don't remember this, but when I told you he took over maybe the worst college program available, I meant it. It was an astonishingly terrible program. Sports Illustrated wrote a story right before the 1988 season calling them Futility U and America's most hapless team.
Ooh.
That is what Bill Snyder turned around. I don't think people understand nowadays what Bill Snyder did. The man has a 215 and 117-1 record. I don't know. Words can't describe what he got with at a school that, it was just an amazingly terrible program. So once again, hats off to Bill Snyder. At some point, they should name some sort of award, like maybe most improved. Like if you're the most improved college football program in the country, you should win the Bill Snyder Award because what Bill Snyder did it at Kansas State. Sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. If we're going to talk about Bill Snyder, like I was previously mentioning, his both tenures at Kansas State were spectacular.
Right.
When you look at a program with that much horrible history, and you see he turned them into teams making Big 12 championship games, winning Big 12 championships, winning the Fiesta Bowl, going to multiple BCS and then New Year's Six bowl games. Like that's almost unheard of. You always hear the fluke season, but to have sustained success like that is it's not on an unheard level, but it definitely is put up there with the Hayden Fries of college football. Guys that completely come into programs that have been destitute for a long time and just reinventing them. I almost want to put Matt Campbell in that category as the next one at Iowa State. I'm not sure yet because we got to see where they go after losing Breece Hall and Brock Purdy. But I do have a lot going for the Cyclones as well. With that being said, just to kind of wrap everything off, there's 2 former Hawaii Warriors that I follow the team very closely. I want to mention because they transferred out. Nick Martin, who's now at Cincinnati, tall, big wide receiver, who definitely can make some impact on special teams when it comes to the NFL. I don't know if he's an NFL-type wide receiver as of yet, but he's definitely going to have the ability to showcase his abilities, and physically, he's got the tools. Also, another guy is Daniel Hunter, running back, who transferred from Hawaii to Liberty. Man is explosive when he gets to the secondary, and he can get to the secondary with ease. Don't let him get to open space, or he will burn you. Just an eye out for them in the UDFA pool. So those are my prospects for right now.
Okay. And I'm going to speak about another turnaround artist, Tom Allen at Illinois. I wish at Illinois. Sorry. I went to Illinois for graduate school, so I always will want them to. I wish we had Tom Allen. We do not. Indiana has Tom Allen. And there's been a bunch of impact transfers we talk about. And from Archbishop Alter, so a guy who's, obviously familiar with that part of the country before he ended up landing where he landed at Missouri, was Connor Bazelak. And at Archbishop Alter, he was a 4-star prospect. Some people had him ranked as high as the 10th ranked quarterback or pro-style quarterback prospect in the country. And despite the fact that he actually ran a wishbone offense, but I guess they just looked at him and decided he was going to be a pro-style guy. I don't know. But still, he managed to pass for over 1,500 yards on a wishbone offense, which is very impressive. 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions his final year that he was in high school. Red shirts when he first gets to Missouri, and then begins playing due to ineffectiveness and injury of the guys ahead of him in 2020 as just a redshirt freshman. As co-freshman of the year for the SEC conference, has a pretty good 2021, and then, like I said, transferred for his redshirt junior year. I think he's going to flourish there in Indiana. I think that Indiana is not going to be a flash in the pan. Now, because of just the limitations that they have on their kind of program, they're not going to be knocking off Michigan and Ohio State anytime soon. I mean, maybe every once in a while they might beat one of them, the same way that Northwestern every once in a while might beat one of them. But I think they'll continuously be a 7, 8, 9, and sometimes even 9-win team consistently. Tom Allen is the right man for that job. He is an extraordinarily good coach, and they're going to be good. And once again, I'm going to look like an idiot if they go 3-9 this year, but I don't think that's going to happen. I feel reasonably confident that they'll continue to be I think worst case scenario, a 6-win team, but I think they're probably going to win more games than that. I'm also a big fan of Taiwan Mullen, who some people think is a future first-round draft pick. He certainly has a chance, at least in my mind, he has a chance. Florida kid from Coconut Creek, which is, for those who are familiar with the area, not far from where Lamar Jackson and a bunch of other fantastic players are from. He's a Fort Lauderdale young man. Travell, he has a brother who's coming. And yes, same high school as Lamar Jackson. I think they might even no. His brother played with Lamar Jackson. His brother Trayvon and Lamar Jackson were had a couple of years together at high school. Brother went to Clemson. Very fast, right? A terrific track athlete, 100 meters, 200s, and 4x1 relay in Florida, where people can run. And he might be one of the most athletic players in the entire Big Ten Conference, and he's at Indiana. That would have been something you would not have said not that long ago, that a guy who is that kind of athlete is at Indiana, but he is. He's a terrific athlete. He was a first-team All-American, the first Indiana cornerback in the history of their program. They've been playing football a long time, and the second one to achieve All-American, first or second. So they've had a second-team All-American at corner before, but he's the first-team All-American in the history of their program. He's on the Chuck Bednarik watch list, the Jim Thorpe watch list, the Brockman University. He's on all the watch lists. He should be at the Senior Bowl. So if you're not familiar with him, first of all, why? But nonetheless, if you are not, make yourself familiar with him. He's a terrific prospect, and a guy that right now is in my top 40, not quite first round. I don't know. I have a close to first round grade on him. He's a high second right now for me, but if he has a terrific year this year, he'll easily push his way into the first.
Yeah, and when you look at the Indiana program in general, especially the jump they made in 2020, there's a lot of talent coming out of there. Obviously, Michael Penix Jr., who didn't really work out in 2021, he's not Washington. But that was a big jump for the program of having him have the success he had. Guys like, I'm going to mispronounce his name again. Did I pronounce that correctly? The wide receiver.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. Come again?
The wide receiver out of Indiana, Frogafile.
Tyrese Fryfogle. So at one point they had Tyrese Fryfogle and Wap Filio.
Yeah,
I mean, the all-name team of wide receivers on the same team. Yep.
Yeah, and then Isaiah Pacheco at running back, who could possibly elevate himself to RB1 for the Kansas City Chiefs by the start of the season. So there is definitely a lot of talent churning out of Bloomington right now. And just in general in college football, it's going to be very interesting to see, because we're always talking about the evolution, right? And as of right now in the Big Ten, the cream of the crop is, of course, Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Iowa, right? I think we can say those are the top 5 teams at the moment. And then underneath them, you got teams like Minnesota. Of course, I got to slip my mind. Possibly Nebraska, if they're able to make that comeback. Teams like that. But in
Iowa's
yeah,
Penn State.
Exactly.
Right,
Penn State, thank you. That's the team I was thinking of. Penn State, like they're making the jump. Now, the question is, who's that next team to kind of elevate? And Purdue has been elevating themselves into becoming more than just a team that knocks off Ohio State once every 2 years, right? They're becoming a much more sustainable program, especially with their bowl win over Tennessee. Now, there's this real kind of question mark right now. Who's gonna be the next Purdue? Could it be Maryland? Could it be Rutgers? Could it be Indiana? And everything's pointing right now towards Indiana. You know what I'm saying? Because of all the recruits that they're bringing in, all the talent they keep churning out. I think 2021 was a fluke, and I agree with you, Bill, that they're going to get on track in 2022 as well.
Well, the one thing, and we'll get off Indiana after this, but depth is the issue, right? The thing that they don't have that some of the other sort of, traditional powerhouses have is if they lose one or two key players, there's a big old drop off. They are no longer the same football team. If you're Ohio State, even if you lose 2 or 3 of your best players, the guys that you've got coming out are 4 and 5 stars, and they might be less polished, they might be less experienced, but they're still about the same level of talent. That is simply not true at Northwestern. It's not true at Indiana. Not true at Vanderbilt. If you lose one of your 2 or 3 of your best players,
that's
you're going to have a losing season, right? You are going to end up, losing more games than you win. But if they are able to stay healthy, they should be back to being a contender. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kentucky in the SEC. And once again, it's that whole question of, is it sustainable? We use the term sustainable. I like that term. Kentucky went from being one of those teams that goes 5-6, 6-5, 5-6, 6-5, like almost alternating almost every year between 5 and 6, and they might jump up and win 7 games. We're like, 7 games, and that was Kentucky for a long time, actually. I remember one year they won like 10 games or 9 games, and that was one of my biggest scouting misses in my life was on Andre Woodson at quarterback. And they were terrific. They knocked off LSU. I think they won 9 games that season. They were just killing people, right? And I overrated Andre Woodson. I can admit that. But that was such a big year for them because that's not normally what happens when you're University of Kentucky. And if indeed the Wildcats, who have been through a fair amount really, are able to sustain, and that's a big question, obviously. Are you able to sustain? Are you able to put together back to back to back, right? Because if they do that, that'll be back to back to back, like 3 really good seasons in a row, right? That's big time. That's huge for them. That's not something you normally see in the Bluegrass State, is being good and staying good.
Yes.
Normally, like I said, you use the term fluke. That's normally what happens. If they have a 9 or 10 win season, everyone's like, oh, that's cool. Well, it'll be back to 6 wins next year, but we enjoyed it, the run. But now they're beginning to crank out NFL talent. They're consistently winning at a higher level than before. They added, and this is a name to watch out for, offensive coordinator Liam Cohen moved on, obviously.
Went to the LA Rams. Back to the LA Rams.
Yes, correct. Which is a compliment. I mean, it lets you know what people think of him. And now Rich Scangarello is now in there. And the offensive line was really the heart and soul of that team. They lost, obviously, a little less than a year ago, I guess. They're amazing. John Franklin, their great offensive line coach who battled cancer. Right down to the very last moments, practically, he was still trying to coach those guys. And the spirit of that, stayed with those offensive linemen, and Rosenthal and Kennard and Fortner and all those guys clearly took it personally, that what he tried to put in them. But they, obviously moved on from those guys. 3 guys who were big time guys are all gone, NFL guys. The transfer portal brought in Kenneth Horsey, who's going to play one of the guards for them apparently this year. Tayshawn Manning transferred in from Auburn. Obviously, we haven't seen him play in Kentucky yet. And they have one of the least sexy but most effective running backs in the country, in Chris Rodriguez. Chris Rodriguez doesn't seem to know it's 2022 because he's not run at all like a 2022 running back. He runs like a 1972 running back. Guys like John Brockington, right? He runs like that, like Lawrence McCutcheon. You know how you've heard of one cut and go runners, Brock?
Mm-hmm.
He's a no cut and go runner. He's not planning to cut. He's not going to dodge you. He's not going to try to make you miss. He's going to run straight at you and see how badly you want to tackle. That seems to be his raison d'etre. Seems to be his modus operandi. I came here to play old school football. Did you? I seem to be his question every time he straps it on. I don't know if that's sustainable, a term you use. I don't know if you can do that for 5 or 10 years. But for the next year or so, he's coming back to at least one more time. And I don't know, maybe he'll decide to make someone miss this year. I don't know. But whether he does or doesn't, he's a very effective, blunt instrument back. And the way those guys have blocked up front, that's a good question, right? Is he a creature of that tremendous offensive line, or can he still get it done without? We're about to find out. But he was a 9-touchdown, 1,400-plus yard guy last year. And, of course, speaking of all-name teams, Cavassier Smoke is the sort of lightning to his thunder or dash to his crash or whatever term you want to use.
Yeah, and the University of Kentucky football has experienced tremendous amounts of success of late. Obviously, winning a New Year's Six game in 2018, won last year as well, having the 7th overall pick in Josh Allen, or was it he 8th? He was 7th, right?
I think you're right.
Because Jones was 6th, right? Also, to all the New York Giants fans watching, if I was your GM, as I was shouting in my dorm room, I would have selected Josh Allen and then eventually selected Daniel Jones later. I don't believe Washington would have selected him, but that's just me personally. I guess we'll never know. But do want to shout out my friend Tyler Fukuroda because he is a diehard Giants fan and he was screaming his mind out when they took Daniel Jones. So just note that by proxy, I feel your pain. With that being said, the University of Kentucky, Mark Stoops, incredible job with that program. Because what I knew them for was the hefty lefty, giving Tebow a concussion that one year, and also Tim Couch and Hal Mummy and the air raid offense.
Yes.
That's all I need Kentucky for. And then basketball, right? Football was not existent at the University of Kentucky. With that being said, they've turned out great talent. Obviously, Josh Allen, Lynn Bowden Jr., Benny Snell, those linemen that we just talked about, Fortner and Kennard, and then obviously Wandale Robinson, 2nd round pick to the Giants this draft as well. With that being said, I remember watching the game against Georgia, and you were absolutely right about Rodriguez. He does not care. Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, Trayvon Walker, don't care. I'm going to put my head right into your chest and see who wants it more. Almost a Brian Dawkins mentality. With that being said, I think Will Levis is the most overrated quarterback in all of college football. I have seen nothing. I think the SEC in general, when it comes to quarterback, are highly overrated. I'm a big fan of Bryce Young. Will Levis, overrated. Hendon Hooker, overrated. Anthony Richardson, overrated. However, Richardson.
Wait, you left out KJ Jefferson. He can't get some of this too?
Oh, sorry. I was getting to it. I'm not even done yet. KJ Jefferson, overrated. Whoever Auburn is starting, overrated just because Auburn is a mess right now. Okay? Missouri, I don't even want to rate them. It's so bad to watch. There's the Heisman winner, and there's everybody else. I take that. There's the Heisman winner, national champion Stetson Bennett, who does what he's supposed to do.
Yep.
And then everybody else who everyone wants to put a first-round grade on. There is no way Will Levis is going to be the first overall pick, nor does he deserve to be the first overall pick. He's a product of his system, which is a great system that won LA a Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean he is an NFL caliber quarterback. I don't see it from him. He doesn't have the consistent offensive production to say, yeah, this is the dude we want to go with. And at times you could say, like, you could look back at Justin Herbert, for example, at Oregon, and say, oh, maybe he's hampered by the offensive system that the coordinators run. That's clearly not the case in this situation. I'm just not a big fan of Will Levis. And again, if I'm going to go on my rant, KJ Jefferson, he is who he is. Hendon Hooker is who he is. When the times get tough, Hooker's going deep. All right. You know how hard it is when you put money on Tennessee and he launches 4 Hail Marys in a row? It's not fun to watch when you are a Vols fan or if you're betting on the Vols. Anthony Richardson, I have some faith because Billy Napier has done tremendous work at Louisiana Lafayette. But again, I'm just not seeing the hype when it comes to him as of yet. But going back to Kentucky, I'm just not a big fan of Will Levis at all. I love the structure of their team, but I don't see them having the same repeat success as the year before. I think they're going to sit down to an 8-win team, go to a bowl game, probably win. I just don't see them having a double-digit win season or going to a New Year's Six bowl game.
Got it. I want to spend some time in the MAC just because I've always loved the MAC. I root hard for those guys to get the attention that they deserve. And I mean, when I was, really starting to dig into the scouting world, when they started doing MACtion on Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever nights, it was like manna from heaven, right? Because you've been programmed, from whatever age to watch college football on Saturdays. And that's what you did. And then suddenly it's like, hey, how would you like to watch, instead of watching, I don't know, an episode of Cupid or an episode of Early Edition or whatever it is you'd be watching on Wednesday nights. How about an episode of college football, action? And then the games would be fuego. And so I don't know if they did it on purpose, but those first several MAC games I watched when they first started doing like Tuesday night, Wednesday night action were always amazing. And I was like, okay, I don't know how they're doing this, how they're making all these games be so amazing, crazy games, but I'm in. And so I've always been a fan. I first saw Chad Pennington back when Marshall was in the MAC, believe it or not. That's where I first saw Chad Pennington. Action, baby. Byron Leftwich back when Marshall was in the MAC. I kind of miss Marshall being in the MAC. It didn't really make a lot of sense culturally speaking, but it was cool to get to watch. But there's a few guys in the MAC who I think are going to be really, 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 really good. And they're going to be slowly but surely discovered. At least I hope surely discovered. I think Ball State has some guys that have a shot to play at the next level. I think Bowling Green has a couple of guys. I mean, obviously, when you're talking about the MAC, you're not going to find, it's not the SEC. There's not 5 or 6 prospects per team, even on the best team, but you might get 2 or 3. And, last year, so here's an interesting statistic. Since 2011, 15. Since 2015, 11 of the teams in the MAC have played for the conference title, and no program has gone back-to-back in the MAC since 10 years ago? 11? Yeah, 10 years ago. No, 11 years ago. 2011, 2012. 2011, 2012 was the last time someone went back-to-back in the MAC. You don't go back in the back in the MAC. Back-to-back in the MAC. Say that 4 times fast. Northern Illinois might be the team, if somebody can do it. It might be Northern Illinois. I watch out also for Western Michigan. And my sneaky whatever is Ball State. But I'm going to start with a familiar name, Brett Gabbert. Yes, he is the younger brother of Blaine Gabbert. He is a talented guy. He's at Miami of Ohio. He's a good athlete. I said the difference between he and his brother is he's a little smaller and doesn't have quite the same arm strength. But he's a quick guy, good feet. And like I said, he can make plays happen with his feet. They have a very good defense. Bill Brechen, that's a name to watch out for. I think I don't know how much longer they're going to keep him there because I'm sure a bigger program is going to come calling soon, but he's good. Sterling Weatherford, obviously, is gone. Cedric Boswell, gone. They lost their top 2 defensive ends in Lonnie Phelps and Ben Kempler, and the guy that backed them up in Cameron Butler. Nonetheless, I still think they're going to be a good defense, which I know sounds a little strange after saying how many guys they lost and talking about the lack of depth. But despite that, I guess is what I'm saying, I think that they've got enough to keep contending. So I mentioned Gabbert, who I think is a legit pro prospect, but he's not my favorite prospect. My favorite prospect is all-purpose yardage machine Lou Nichols III from Central Michigan.
Yes.
If you haven't been watching Lou Nichols III, get your life in order, right? If you are a true fan of wildly underrated football prospects, and he is a wildly underrated prospect. I see people putting out top 10s, top 15s, top 20s even at running back without any mention, without a whisper of Lou Nichols III, and I just say you're incorrect. You are wrong. You will come to rue the day. You will later wonder, how did I miss out on this guy? When he gets to, shout out to Tom Nagy, who's going to get bugged about this guy soon. But when he ends up in the Senior Bowl, and he should end up in the Senior Bowl, I hope he does at least, people are going to discover him. I'm going to find him and say, okay, this guy's the real deal, because he is. He's the real deal. He catches the ball extremely well, and he's not he's quick, but he's not some little scat back. He's an honest 222 pounds, Brock. Probably about 5'10" and a half. The person he reminds me a lot of is I think he has a little more top end speed actually than Hunt. But I see a lot of Hunt in him, right? He's a guy that has physically similar to Hunt, maybe not quite as thick, but thick, and catches the ball so well. Guy from Cass Technical High School, right? Powerhouse school in Detroit, was a terrific player coming out of high school. For some reason, didn't get all the stars I thought he had coming. Not sure why. He was, all whatever, all city, all metro. That's the word. All metro in the Detroit area, named by the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. Both said he was, Associated Press, all metro, redshirted, and then after redshirting, was the MAC Freshman of the Year in 2020 and did everything. 508 yards rushing that year, 4 touchdowns. Also had 109 yards in receiving. Also was a terrific, what do you call that? Return specialist. He did everything. Right? Did everything. Did literally everything. He had one game that I thought was maybe one of the most impressive games by any freshman that year. Was his 196 yards he totaled up, which was the second most by a running back since Thomas Rawls back in 2014 when he went absolutely ape on Northern Illinois, which I watched that game for 270 games against them. He was just in the zone. But then he follows it up last year by leading the whole FBS, and no one talks about it. He led the whole FBS in rushing yards, 1,848 yards last year, right? 16 rushing touchdowns, 18 total touchdowns, 338 yards in receiving, 2,186 all-purpose yards per game. Per season, 168.2 per game. I think he's worst case scenario top 6. I don't know how you get him as low as 6, but I could. If someone says 6, I can't fight too hard. But if you don't have him in your top 10, you're just doing it wrong. I'm sorry, I got upset or whatever.
No, speak your truth.
Do you have some favorite prospects in the MAC?
You pretty much said them already. I definitely gotta watch more Tuesday night action. But definitely when it comes to the MAC in general, the talent coming out of there is very impressive. And I'm gonna mispronounce his name, Nick's the third, right? The running back. I watched him in his bowl game against Washington State because I'm a big Cougars fan. And quite frankly, he was running up. As far as I remember, he was running all up and down that defense. Yeah, Washington State doesn't have the best defense, but my goodness, he was taking it to him. And quite frankly, in general, when it comes to Central Michigan, not enough respect gets put on that program for the talent they churn out. Overall pick Antonio Brown. Then last year, Bernhard Raymond, Godecki, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, the tackle. You also had a guy like Khalil Pimpleton, who also came out of there. So they're producing NFL talent at a very high rate, considering where they play, considering the state where they play, and the teams within that state in general. With that being said, I view definitely more on the MAC in general. You basically covered all my guys.
I'll give you one other, and there's some others, but I don't want to spend too much time on them. And I think he might be one of the most underrated receivers in the country is Hassan Bedouin. And obviously people pay fairly little attention to Eastern Michigan University, despite, obviously the success that Max XX Crosby's having. And probably their best pro prospect for the Eagles of Eastern Michigan since Max XX Crosby is the aforementioned Hassan Bedouin. He's one of the best and most underrated, in my mind, receivers in the country. He's on the both Maxwell and Biletnikoff watch list. And he should be in the top 4 or so if he continues to play like he has in the Biletnikoff Award voting, even though I know he's at Eastern Michigan and no one cares. But he's terrific. He's absolutely terrific. And I hope that people will sort of get past the whole he's at Eastern Michigan thing and pay attention to just how good he is, because he's really, really good. But yeah, I like the MAC more than most people, as I've mentioned. And they've got a couple other guys I could mention, but those are the big names, right? And I'll throw out like one guy on defense, I guess. And Jarrett Patterson has a brother named James Patterson. And he's like watching Jarrett Patterson, a slightly larger version of Jarrett Patterson, play linebacker. Instinctive, quick, very strong for a guy with a smaller frame. And he'll also be, like his brother, wildly underrated. And so probably be available either at the very end of the draft, even as an undrafted free agent. But I think that James Patterson ends up playing like his brother at the next level. And there's other guys, but those I want to make sure. I would feel remiss if those guys didn't have their names mentioned. And Let's talk. I mean, obviously, Mountain West is a conference we'd be discussing under any circumstances, and I know that you've got a lot of information and insight into the Mountain West, or not Mountain West. Yeah, Mountain West, right? That is the one thing about. Yeah, Mountain West. And tell me about some of your favorite teams and players in the Mountain West for this year.
All right, so starting off with the teams, just in general, the Mountain West has undergone a lot of changes. Obviously, Boise State isn't the dominant force that they once were. They're trying to refine themselves under Andy Avalos. Hawaii has gone through a tremendous change, bringing in Timmy Chang, the school legend, to be their head coach. Yes, absolutely. Alongside the fact that there's teams trying to refine themselves. Teams like Nevada, after Jay Norvell has moved on to Colorado State. Colorado State is now going from a run-based attack to a pass-based attack. UNLV is trying to find their kind of footing in this whole kind of mix, especially as they're trying to prepare somehow a move to the Pac-12. We'll talk about all that later. But right now, it's kind of up for grabs. It was a big shocker when Utah State last year defeated San Diego State for the Mountain West Championship. With that being said, I want to start off with Logan Bonner, quarterback from Utah State. I think he's going to turn a lot of heads this year. This is a guy that really, a lot of people didn't really get to watch, but Utah State does play Alabama this year. And if he has a somewhat decent showing, he can elevate himself into being a quarterback that could go into possibly the second round in the draft. There's nothing really spectacular about his game, but there's really also really nothing that is wrong. He makes good decisions. He protects the football, and quite frankly, he gets it done in clutch time. He did lose his top threat, Devin Tompkins, to the draft this year, but with the foundation at Utah State, I expect a big year from the Aggies, and honestly, I can see Utah State knocking off BYU as well in this season. And if they're able to beat either Alabama, which I don't see happening, but more importantly, BYU, they could also be in a position, if they run the table in the Mountain West, to make a New Year's Six bowl game. I forget his first name, but there's a wide receiver, last name Doss, out of Boise State. Like, everyone's kind of high on Xavier Worthy out of Texas because of his speed. You need to take a look at this kid. He can absolutely pass defenders. It's almost ridiculous how fast he is. I mean, when you talk about just pure speed, I think he's one of the fastest dudes in the country. And he's going to really put that on display, considering Khalil Shakir has moved on, Boise State, obviously, to the NFL. So those are two guys I kind of really high on when it comes to the Mountain West. Obviously, I've already mentioned Jake Haener. And I guess the last person I want to say is University of Hawaii running back Dietrich Parsons. He really elevated his game last season into being the top running back for the Warriors. Obviously, I mentioned Daniel Hunter, who left for Liberty. He's really going to get a majority of the carries, and I expect him to have almost an Alex Green-esque season. He kind of comes out of nowhere, starts out a little bit hot, come the middle of the season. I can see him averaging at least 100 yards a game when you get into that meat of the season. So that's another guy I want to shout out, and people should keep an eye out for.
I'll throw out a couple guys. I don't know if their bounce back even makes sense. I mean, Hank Bachmeier passed for over 3,000 yards, had 20 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. So I don't know if bounce back is even the right term to use. I think he'll continue to improve. I think that Bachmeier is talented. And I just think that it was just a down year for Boise State overall, and he was part of it. He was part of the down, but I think he's going to be better. I mean, they averaged just under 30 points. I think 29.2 last year, which is their first year that Boise State's averaged fewer than 30 points per game since 1998. So talk about consistent. George Halani is another sort of no-frills kind of back who probably will get, 1,100 or so yards just by doing what he does, running into and through and occasionally around people. Tariq LeBoeuf, I think, is going to have a breakout season in the secondary for Boise State. I also like Caleb Biggers. They have not been great up front on defense very recently, and I don't know if they'll be dramatically better up front on defense, but I think they'll be a little bit better up front. And maybe the best player in their defense is another secondary guy named J.L. Skinner. And if you haven't a chance to check him out, I highly recommend it. I think he's a pro player. I think he's going to probably a mid-round draft pick as well, maybe fourth, fifth. But I think he finds his way onto an NFL roster, and he was an impact freshman. Like he came in right away, and was one of the better players on the defense. And now that he is, I guess, veteran-ish. No, veteran-ish. He's a full-on veteran, right? I guess he is a senior, but he's preseason All Mountain West. He's on the Jim Thorpe and the Bronco Nagurski watch list. And last season, he had 92 tackles, including 66 solo tackles from the secondary. You don't see that every day. He also recovered 3 fumbles, forced 2 fumbles, and had 7 tackles for loss, 5 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. So he was doing I call like a Rondé Barber kind of thing, where he plays at all 3 levels practically of the defense. I think he's a legit, like I said, prospect, and I think one of the more underrated secondary prospects in the country. And I'm with you on San Diego State. I think that they have a very good chance to be the class of the Mountain West this year. I think Boise will be right there, sort of, right there beside them or behind them. But I think Boise bounces back, but I still think San Diego State might have just a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. San Diego State is definitely, to me, the cream of the crop when it comes to the Mountain West at the moment. Everyone's really hot in Fresno State because Tedford's back, because Hayner's back, and Hayner has a bunch of weapons who I know that you love. But when it comes to consistent play, especially on defense, San Diego State has it. I'm not going to let their fluke loss in the Mountain West Championship game derail a season for which they beat Utah, who ended up winning the Pac-12. With that being said, Brady Hoke is still an excellent head coach at that level. No, it didn't work out at Michigan, but he has a proven track record to be great. But I want to touch on this. One of the things that you and we agree a lot on a lot of things, which is always nice. One of the things we disagree on is Hank Bachmeier.
Yeah,
I think he's garbage. I'm sorry. I think he's tough. But Nick Foles is tough. You know what I mean? Nick Foles
sure
also doesn't throw triple coverage on a daily basis.
I'll count that as a win.
It's a win if it's the playoffs. If it's the regular season, oh, Lord bless you. Hank Bachmeier is notorious for just standing it and throwing it right at the DB, trying to make a play. Right? I almost want to say he's the Jake Plummer of the Mountain West Conference. He's a dude that's going to go out there, try and make a play, but probably throw an interception along the way. I don't know why you love Hank Bachmeier so much.
Well, I think love is the word, but I think he's an NFL prospect. That's what I'm saying. And once again, if he becomes Jake Plummer, I'll still take that as a win. Most guys won't be that good. I mean, that's still better than 97% of the guys who are starting at the Division I level. He's a 3 percentile guy if he becomes Jake Plummer.
Fair enough. I'm just saying I don't want to use the word saturated, but I'm going to use that word. With the saturated quarterback class that's going to be this year, I think it's going to be really hard for him to find a spot. I think it's going to be a UDFA, almost in a Carson Strong type of situation. I'm not saying another guy you like, which we actually disagree on as well. But I think he's good. He needs to have some years to develop, and I'm not sure if he'll ever become a person that can consistently start in the NFL. I think he's a baseball bat and clipboard holder for his career.
Okay. I think he's a little more than that, but obviously, like I said, we don't agree on everything, and it's fine. We don't have to. Conference USA certainly deserves to be talked about much more than it usually is, quite frankly. And UTSA, which another one of those I'm going to say out of nowhere, but they were not one of the stronger teams in the conference until very recently. They hired the right coach. He found the right quarterback and some other players, and boom, they went from being a below average to a very intriguing and one of the last teams to pick up a loss all last year even. I'm fascinated to see what happens, to see if they, once again, the term used, if it's sustainable or if that was one amazing year and they'll talk about it forever. Do you have any favorite players or any prospects or things that you're interested about the Conference USA?
Just in general, it's a very exciting time to be a team in Conference USA because of the high octane offenses. Obviously, West Kentucky put up a lot of points last year. The Hilltoppers did. also got UTSA, which had a phenomenal year. They're arguably one win away from going to a New Year's Six bowl game. I think they can continue to improve. I don't see them being a one-off. And they've also dedicated, by re-signing their head coach to an extension, they made a commitment to that program of being great. Alongside the fact you still got, I forget his last, Damion, head coach out of UTEP. El Paso, I think, is going to turn into a very, very, very solid program. As of right now, I don't really have a guy that really stands out, in my opinion, out of that conference. However, there are certain teams that I want to keep an eye out for. Louisiana Tech is definitely one of them.
Yep.
West Kentucky, like I previously mentioned, I think they could have a very solid offense. And honestly, I think there's gonna be a guy out of UTSA on defense that's gonna pop out like a Tariq Woolen. That's gonna surprise a lot of people, possibly in that linebacker group. I'm not too sure yet, but that's gonna be where I put my predictions on.
Well, UAB has some guys on defense that I really like, but since we talked about UTSA, I'll start with them and then I'll go to UAB. So UTSA, obviously, Sincere McCormick's gone, and the most highly rated prospect at UTSA, maybe in their history, certainly in a very long time. Obviously, when people got a good long look, and long is the word, I guess, at Tariq Woolen, who is long and stupidly fast, amazingly fast. He set a lot of people's sort of. There are a lot of breathless scouting reports about Tariq Woolen. He's showing that he has the talent to play in the next level, obviously. And I don't see them going 12-2 again, but I do see them being a 9 or 10 win team probably. Frank Harris, who was a guy who a couple years ago was a just hand the ball off to Sincere McCormick guy, became a 265.9 per game passer guy last year, still with McCormick being the focus of the offense. I think this year they add another 20, 25 yards per passing per game, and he flirts with the 280 something to 290 passing yards per game level. I think Frank Harris is wildly underrated. I think he has a very strong arm and is a good athlete. His decision-making can still use little tweaks. They have a lot of predetermined throws in their offense, and I think he needs to take more ownership of that offense. But last but not least, the best wide receiver group in Conference USA is also there in San Antonio. They have Joshua Cephas, DeCorian Clark, and Zahari Franklin. I think at least one of those guys ends up being an NFL guy. Probably Clark, but we'll see. It could be someone else, but I think a lot of those guys are very good. And I think just the defense isn't going to be as good as it was last year. And then the one thing I do want to mention, obviously, you aren't going to – it's impossible, not impossible, it's highly unlikely to have another year like the year that Bailey Zappi had. No one will have another year quite like that. However, that having been stated, I would say watch out for Jared Dagey, former West Virginia quarterback, to put up big numbers as well. Obviously, he doesn't have Jarrett Stearns or Mitchell Tinsley to throw to, but they still have some good receivers. Their defense might actually be improved this year. Tyson Summers is their new D coordinator. I like him a lot. Here's a name to watch out for. Khalif Haliassi is a guy to watch out for, and A.J. Breathwaite Jr. They may have the best two corners in the whole conference on the same team. The rest of the defense is, not spectacular. But those two guys are pretty good, and it's a pretty pass-heavy conference. So having two really good corners, while it isn't everything, it certainly matters. You want to talk AAC, or is there some other conference you wanted to hit to before we got to the AAC, then the AAC, and then ACC, and then the big schools?
Look, let's jump into the AAC at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong. Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, they're all still part of the ACC, right? They are still the jump,
right? So
that's next year, right?
They are invited and have accepted invitations to join the Big 12, but it hasn't happened yet, right? It's still in the future. You are correct.
Gotcha. Just making sure. Yeah, definitely want to kick it off with the quarterback, Clayton Tune, out of University of Houston. I was not high on him at all entering last season, and he completely changed my mind. I mean, that was a dude that really developed as a passer, making accurate, confident throws against quality opposition. I think this is the year Houston takes that step and wins the AAC. Dana Holgerson, great head coach, great offensive thinker, and I definitely see Houston taking that step up in the right direction. Um, out of SMU, a defender I really like is Isaac Slade Maltatia, Oregon transfer guy from Hawaii. I think he's a guy that's kind of been under the radar for a long time in his career. He won the Rose Bowl 2 years ago. He's a dude that has been a consistent solid performer. I can see him being a day 3 to EDFA pick that makes a roster and becomes an impact player, whether on defense or special teams. I already mentioned Nick Marner. I think he's a guy that could be a great special teamer just due to his size that he has. Yeah, those are my top guys coming out of the AAC.
Yeah. So in the AAC, which is a conference that I once again, like the MAC, I probably paid more attention than most. And of course, now they're getting more attention, right, because of what Cincinnati did. But I've been a fan, since before it was cool, since before people, since before sort of everybody was aware of, what was cooking there. So in that conference, they're going to be losing, as we said, a couple of their top teams, but they haven't lost them yet. That doesn't go into effect, for another year. They lost a lot from Cincinnati. Desmond Ritter, Jerome Ford, Alec Pierce, Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Brian Cook, Curtis Brooks, Joel Dublanco, Makai Sanders, all gone.
Did you mention Alex Pierce yet?
Yeah, Mr. Pierce, when I mentioned the offensive guys, yeah. All gone. All those guys are gone. However, they've started recruiting. They've been recruiting. They've done some good recruiting. Ben Bryant, who was on the team last year, is battling with Evan Prater and Ryan Montgomery. Evan Prater and Ben Bryant for a quarterback. At running back is Ryan Montgomery, Tyler Scott, and Trey Tucker, who are competing. And Montgomery running back, Scott and Tucker at receiver. Their defense is one of the best in the country. And I don't think they'll be quite what they were last year, but I think they'll still continue to be a solid defense, top to bottom. A lot of what you said about Houston, I completely agree. Clayton Tune still feels, how you talked about how you just couldn't buy into Bachmeier? That's where I am on Tune. I still feel like he's more a creature of the offense than he is, a super talent. But I love Nathaniel Dell. I think people are way too low on him. I think Nathaniel Dell is a top 100 prospect. I think he's one of the top 6 or 7 receivers in the country. I think people are just wildly sleeping. I don't understand why they aren't higher on him. I do not get it. He's not big. I mean, other than that, he's just not the biggest cat in the world, right? He's listed at 5'10", 185. Probably both those things are a little optimistic, but he's a terrific player. Terrific. 90 catches, 1,329 yards last year, 12 touchdowns. Led the conference, was one of the best sophomore receivers in the country. And if he went to Ohio State and if Smith and Jigma went to Houston, people will be talking about Nathaniel Dell as a top 10 overall prospect because I think he's faster than Jigba, quite frankly, Smith and Jigba. But they're similar. They're similar guys. He almost ended up being a MAC guy, right? Old Dominion also was a place where he was seriously being pursued as well. I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a terrific player this year and then on into, his years in the NFL, where he'll probably be a slot guy, as you said, but I think he can do more than that potentially, but I think people will prefer to have him in the slot because that's what his quickness can really allow him to, as the kids would say, eat. I'm going to mention UCF for just a second. So they get John Reese Plumlee, who I call the people's champion from his days at Ole Miss. Remember when Ole Miss fans used to just take to the message boards and demand to see more John Reese Plumlee? Remember those days? Wasn't that long ago.
It was an odd time in Oxford, to say the least.
Yes, it was. It was. Obviously, Matt Corral, or with the arrival of Matt Corral, he solidified that. But before Matt Corral sort of took that job by the throat, there was a lot of John Reeves Plumlee love in Oxford. So he's competing with Mikey Keene. So Mikey Keene is a true, sort of traditional passer. And John Reeves Plumlee is, I mean, if his name was Jaquan Plumlee, people would be wanting to move him to wide receiver or running back or something. But luckily for him, his name is John Reeves Plumlee, and he sounds like, a mid-19th century historian. But he's...
Yeah, he sounds like one of those hard-nosed, blue-collar kind of players.
Yeah, John Reeves Plumlee. But he's a terrific athlete. He played some receiver.
Student of the game.
Yep, he played some receiver in 2021. I don't know if that's his eventual position or not, but either way, he either wins, the quarterback job, or maybe they shift him back to receiver. Also, Kobe Hudson, a UCF transfer, came in. No, wait, sorry. Well, Hudson is a true receiver, so maybe Plumlee might be as well. We'll see. And then I'll mention one other team that I really like, and that's Mike Houston's East Carolina. Getting rowdy and dowdy, right? Dowdy-Ficken Stadium, which I think is, speaking of underrated, if we ever do one on stadiums and like the total game atmosphere, to me, Dowdy-Ficken deserves to be mentioned with any experience. It's a terrific stadium experience. They have good food. They have a great loud crowd, and it's just good stuff. Highly recommend it, like I said. But back to the team and the thing we're discussing. I think that they're going to be better. They haven't won more than 5 games going back to 2015. They did, however, last year manage to have a 7-5 record, have a winning record for the first time since 2015. I think they're going to build on that in 2022. I think they have consecutive winning seasons for the first time since 2014, 2015, back when Patrick Pickney, who's been on this show before many years ago, was the quarterback. Holt Nailers is back. Keaton Mitchell. First of all, Keaton Mitchell helped to win me a college football fantasy championship. Shout out to you, Keaton Mitchell. But he's a terrific running back that, once again, nobody is talking about. I don't get it. I don't begin to understand it for one single solitary instant. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but Keaton Mitchell can flat get it. He is quick and fast, a bit undersized, but he can go. He can go. I think he's probably, once again, generously listed when they talk about weight. He may be 183, 184 pounds, perhaps. I don't care. He is really, 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 really explosive and fast. And, another guy who had a terrific career in high school, was a track and field guy, 10.99 in the 100 meters dash, 22.42 in the 200 meters, 4x100 on a relay team that set the school record. Comes from a football family. His dad played at Tuskegee back in the day and was on the Ravens for a minute as an undrafted free agent. And so, he comes into this season coming off. Can you have a quiet monster season? Can your season be both quiet and monster at the same time? If so, he had a quiet monster season last year. I mean, listen to what he did. And this is some of his games he had, right? He went for 242 against Tulane, right? Tulane is still wondering where he is and what to do about him. Had 167 yards receiving of that season, in addition to having a really good season as a rusher. So he can run with the ball, obviously. He can catch the ball. Had an 88-yard carry at one shot against Marshall, which is a pretty decent team. I think he'll catch the ball more this season, which I think will be a good thing to catch the ball more, because he's a good receiver, and when he's in space, that's bad for the other team. Very, very bad. I don't think he's quite as fast as CJ2K, because who is? I mean, that would be a sort of an unfair thing to to expect, but he's fast. I won't be shocked at all if he's 4.41, 4.42, maybe even 4.36, 4.37. I think he's somewhere in that range. And I'll be surprised if he's slower than 4.43. I think that anything above 4.43 will be a surprise to me when he gets time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also want to shout out CJ2K. That's a nickname I haven't heard in a long time. Chris Johnson, East Carolina legend. Another guy I want to mention is Josh Wild out of Cincinnati, tight end. Just a big body guy, 6'6". Just he's not gonna what's the right term? He's not gonna create a lot of space for himself, but he doesn't really need to. He's a guy that you can target because he's just a mismatch all over the field, no matter who you put on him. But last I want to mention when it comes to the quarterback situation at UCF, news just broke. Timmy Mclean out of University of South Florida has recently transferred to University of Central Florida. This is a guy that I was very high on coming into South Florida. He was impressed me in the chances he got as a true freshman. I think he's been very hampered in his development because of what's happened at USF, and there's just a program that's in like this weird space right now. I think going to Gus Malzahn, going to an offense that like UCF, when he gets on the field, I'm not saying it'll be this season, but when he does, he's a guy that can really make an impact. And I wouldn't be surprised whenever he does. It is time for him to enter the NFL draft to be a day 2, day 3 guy that can be a productive NFL pro. So just want to mention his name real quick before we move on.
Okay. Let's talk about some of the. I think did I get all the group of fives? Let me see.
Yes.
Make sure I didn't. Oh no, Sunbelt. Then
Sunbelt.
A little bit about, okay, so the Fun Belt, right, as they have also sort of called themselves, and sometimes very correctly called themselves, because there's some fun teams, some fun football being played in the Fun Belt, as they call it.
Most definitely.
Yep, and there's some pro prospects to be had. And we're going to see, in my mind, some guys come out of there and be successful. So in that conference, I truly believe we're going to see 2 or 3 teams that are real trouble. And I won't be surprised if we see a couple of what do you call it? Upsets, right? Where, they play up in competition. Now, obviously, the big name is Coastal Carolina.
Yes.
And rightly so. They're a terrific program. Jamie Chadwell is maybe the hottest name in college coaching. Every time a big job comes available, his name is immediately on everyone's lips. And once again, rightly so. He has built an amazingly fun and somewhat odd culture there that wins a lot of football games. I still think Coastal Carolina is the team to beat. I think Appalachian State and Georgia State breathe down their necks a little bit. And, I could see them even picking up a loss, let's see, or 2 this season, but probably not more than 2. I think that they're probably I think they're a 1 or 2 loss team. They're going to be really good. And I think the Appalachian State is probably a 2 or 3 loss team, right there with them, quite frankly. Do you have some favorite teams or favorite players you want to mention?
Yes, definitely Coastal Carolina. Without a doubt, the Chanticleers are the cream of the crop of the Sun Belt. And, of course, they're led by their tough, aggressive, hard-nosed running quarterback, Grayson McCall, in that very unique offense that has sprung the likes of Isaiah Lakely to possibly being a starter come week 1 of the NFL season if certain things go his way. He's been very impressive in preseason. With that being said, McCall is more than just a runner. Not only is he, I don't want to say a Steve Young type of runner, but he will put his shoulder into you. I've seen that man take hits, almost vomit on the field because he got blasted in his belly, and then play the next snap, just to show the kind of toughness that he has. But we see that toughness in the Sun Belt as well, especially at Appalachian State with their offense as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Grayson McCall can also make almost every throw that you want. He's not the best thrower of the football, but my goodness, is his mechanics solid. And when it comes to that offense, he makes good decisions off the reads that he gets. And quite frankly, he helps put his other players in top positions. With that being said, when it comes to the rest of the Sun Belt, I think number 2 close it has to be Appalachian State. They run a very aggressive offense that where basically if you're a quarterback, you aren't allowed to slide. You aren't allowed to run out of bounds. The head coach has literally said, you are a football player, go play football. And that type of mindset really breeds into a program. Now, of course, you don't know Appalachian State after upsetting Michigan in what, 07, 08, whatever. But they have turned themselves into a very solid, instead of being, they were what, FCS or Division II national champions?
Yeah, they won some FCS championships in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah, instead of being just that level, they've turned themselves into a legitimate FBS team. A team that went down to Miami and won, right? Or did they lose on the field goal?
Yeah,
they won, right?
They've beaten several Power 5 teams in their history. They've got a number of notches in their belt.
Yeah, exactly. And also the side, the guy DeMarco Jackson, linebacker last year, was kind of the cream of the crop of that defense. I expect more players of that nature to come out of that program. Just real quick before I throw it back to you, Bill. You talk about Jimmy Chadwell a lot. A place I could see him ending up at is Florida State. I've been a Mike Norvell hater since day one. I always said they should have went to Deion Sanders. Obviously, that's not an option anymore. But frankly, Chadwell already has the recruiting roads in that area anyway, and also that type of unique offense is just what Florida State needs to be able to overcome Clemson in the ACC. But that's a conversation for another time. That is how I feel about the Sun Belt Conference.
I'm going to give you a name to remember. Now, Coastal Carolina, we all love them, and they've lost, some good pieces, some really good pieces. We mentioned C.J. Brewer, Shamari Jones, Javon Hiley and Isaiah Likely, the whole highly likely combination, which who didn't love that? But Josiah Stewart is one of the best pass rushers that people just don't talk about, and he's just beginning to put it all together. He's just beginning to figure it all out. He plays the quote-unquote bandit position, and he's just a sophomore. So I'm trying to remember if he took the extra COVID year or not. If he didn't, then he might not even be. Let me remember if he.
If he's a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a true sophomore, so he's not even draft eligible, but he's terrific. And he's a guy that went to high school in Everett, Massachusetts. Is from the Bronx, New York. I think that's why he wasn't on more people's radar, because he's not from some football hotbed, but he's a terrific, terrific player. And he was an utter beast in last year's season, and he was trouble. And teams, frankly, didn't know how to handle him. He had 24 solo tackles, 19 assists, 15 and a half tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And he was a true freshman last year. He's going to be so much trouble. Now he's figuring out how to actually play. Man, when this guy becomes draft eligible, I mean, if there's a guy who comes from this conference who has a chance to go in the top 15 or 16 picks of a draft someday, it could well be Josiah Stewart. He is an utter and complete beast. Just a true sophomore.
And obviously, I don't think fans realize what a college conditioning program can do to the physique of a player. And having that extra year to be able to bulk up and become stronger, more flexible, more agile, whatever is needed, that's going to be a great benefit. So I just want to throw out a quick story before we move on. My brother, he went to Kailua High School, and the starting center for Kailua when he was there was a guy named Sam Satele, second-round pick out of University of Hawaii. To the Miami Dolphins, played 8 years in the league. Dolphins, Colts, Raiders. I believe another team. I can't think of them at the moment. With that being said, obviously, big Polynesian guy already, right? All he does is go off for the summer to the University of Hawaii for their summer program, and then comes back 3 months later, completely different animal than he was 3 months before. Better nutrition, better weightlifting program, better conditioning program. So I just want to throw out there to see the progress of this young kid is going to be incredible. I can see, like Bill has been saying, Stewart break out and being the best defender, not only in the Sun Belt, but in the country, one of the top defenders in the country when he enters his junior year next season. Well, not next season, but the year after this season.
And a guy who's in my top 150 and a guy who's right around 150, maybe just outside of it, are both probably future nickel corners at the next level. One is Jordan Strong of the aforementioned Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina, The other is the younger brother of Clifton Duck. His brother's name is Storm Duck. Once again, on a lot of people's all name team. But I just think he's utterly amazing. He has 55, career tackles, a couple tackles for loss, 5 interceptions, 12 passes broken up. He's just tremendous. Coastal Carolina has a guard named Willie Lampkin, actually, who I think is going to play at the next level. I would watch out for Jared Clark, who is probably the largest defensive player in the whole conference, who also plays for Coastal Carolina. He's listed at 6'4". He's probably on a 6'3" and a quarter, and he's probably 344 or so pounds. And he's going to be a full-time guy. He was a guy who was spelling C.J. Brewer last year. He's been a full-time guy this year. I think Lance Boykin has a chance to be really, really good. He's a big corner. Corners his size often don't even take corners. A lot of times they get shifted to another position. But he started his career at Old Dominion, and now he's transferred, and he'll be playing with the Jordan Strong in that very talented Coastal Carolina secondary. But he's listed at 6'3". I think he's legit 6'2.5", and probably about 206, 207 pounds. He's a big corner. NFL scouts, when they really get a look at him, are going to love him. I think he's going to move up a lot of people's ratings, rankings, whatever term you want to use, sooner rather than later. So that's a guy to look out for if you like big corners, and who doesn't? Okay. Is there anybody else I want to make sure I mention? That's probably no. I'll give you one or two more Appalachian State guys who I think are going to be really, really good. Nick Hampton is a guy that I also think, probably a day 3 draft pick guy, but I think he ends up being drafted out of a linebacker, terrific linebacker. He becomes now the number 1 linebacker for Appalachian State. Obviously, you mentioned DeMarco's gone. Stephen Jones is there's some really good corners. He's another really good. There's at least 3, maybe 4 NFL corners in this conference. Stephen Jones of Appalachian State's really, really good. He had 5 interceptions last year. 3 of them he took back for touchdowns. 8 pass breakups, 4 tackles for loss. Terrific player. Cooper Hodges is playing tackle, but I think he kicks inside the guard at the next level. Another terrific player for Appalachian State on their offense. 3-time All-Star. His 4th year as a starter from a rival on campus who was playing right tackle for them. I think he ends up being a right guard at the next level. And then Nate Knoll. Speaking of quietly great, they have 2 really terrific running backs. The big guy in Cameron Peoples, and once again, another all-name team, at least candidate, Cameron, spelled Camerun, Cameron Peoples, who's the bigger back at about 220 pounds, and then Nate Knoll, the quicker guy, who is about 190-something, maybe almost 200 pounds, but a smaller, quicker guy. They have a really dangerous running back tandem there. And I want to make sure those guys got mentioned as well. Okay, now we can talk Power 5. We'll start with the Atlantic Coast Conference. Who are some of your favorite players in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and why?
All right, so I already started off with Jerkovich, Phil out of Boston College. He's a guy that I really like, and I've already spoken on him, so I just wanted to re-mention him. He's not draft eligible, but I love Will Shipley, the running back out of Clemson. That dude is, when you talk about a 5-star, that dude came in and absolutely lit everyone on fire. I mean, he is explosive in every way possible. I do want to shout out DJ Uyagala. I do think last year didn't show who he was. I think last year was just a fluke. And quite frankly, I didn't think Tony Elliott's offense was effective. And that's why I don't really have a lot of faith with Brendan Armstrong at Virginia. I love the player. I don't love his coaches. Tony Elliott, I don't think is a great offensive mind. I watched that Georgia game. I was screaming at him to stop doing what he was doing. Everything he ran was ineffective. Every route combination was covered. Running game, horrific. Zero ability for them to block, to create space. Nothing good happened. And that's why Clemson had arguably their worst season in the past 5, 6 to 10 years under Dabo Swinney, if you want to go back in the history books. However, I do think that this is a guy he's built very well. He has great mechanics. He has great decision-making skills. when put in the right offense. Last year, I don't think he was in the right offense. I think that the DJ that we saw with Trevor Lawrence as the starter, the DJ is the DJ that's going to come back this year in 2021. I'm not saying he's going to be a high draft pick. I do think he's a guy that you need to watch out for um, as he continues on his journey. Correct me if I'm wrong if he's still at the school, but Corbin, the running back out of Florida State, he's still there, right?
Sean Corbin.
Yeah. I'll make sure I'm accurate on that.
Yes.
He's a guy that I really like.
Is he at Texas A&M? I'm trying to remember. Hold on.
Oh,
I remember hearing that he might end up Texas A&M. So let's make sure.
Yeah, let me double check on that.
This information. Did he transfer or not? I know there was rumors, but I don't know. I don't know if he did. No, it is. He signed as an undrafted free agent with the Giants. That's where
he left for the draft, unfortunately.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, well, that's.
But there was a rumor that he was going to end up at Texas A&M, and he ended up not doing that. He ended up going to the draft. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it happens. It is what it is. Another guy is I'm going to mispronounce his first name perfectly. Clinton Slovis, quarterback from USC, now at Pitt. I think that he had a lot of really good things going for him, and then it all came crashing down because USC and Clay Helton was a dumpster fire. I think going to a place with Pat Narduzzi and a place where you share a practice facility with the Steelers, he's going to mature a lot. I'm not saying, again, he's going to be a top draft pick, but he can be a day 2, day 3 type of player if he declares for the draft this year. I doubt he will because I believe he has multiple years of eligibility left. That's another guy I say that we should watch out for. And lastly, Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, and that very interesting offense, to say the least. The best way I can describe it, it's an RPO, but instead of a standard handoff, it's more of a halfback draw. And then they kind of operate off that motion. It does get redundant after a while. I was screaming at Wake Forest in the ACC championship game to run something else because clearly it wasn't working after the first quarter. But I do believe that as a team, they're going to take that step up, and they're going to be a very effective offense come this season.
I'm pretty sure. Let me see. You mentioned. Let me see. Somebody who I think did transfer out. Though, hold on. You mentioned Corbin, and then you mentioned who else after that?
I saw Corbin, and then I went Slovis at Pitt.
Slovis, okay. I thought you mentioned someone else. Okay, never mind. But yeah,
I hope I didn't.
No, it's okay. I thought you mentioned one other player that actually had ended up transferring. But either way, I think NC State ends up being really good this year. Obviously, I think Devin Leary is a guy that has a chance, more likely as a high-end career backup, but he could start in the right offense in the right situation.
There's Donovan Knight as well.
Yep, there's some good running back.
I really like.
There's some good. Well, wait, did you say Zonovan Knight?
Don't tell me he declared too last year.
He's in the draft. Yeah, he was.
Oh my lord! Oh, I gotta check him on my ACC guys.
He didn't get selected. I think he is an undrafted free agent as well. Maybe, or he might have been drafted late. Actually, he might have been drafted late. But I was going to mention there are still some really good running backs. I love Sean Tucker from Syracuse. He's either depending on what I feel like, he's either running back 1 or 2. I know everyone's got Bijan number 1, but I watched Sean Tucker behind an offensive line that is not nearly as good as the one that Bijan Robinson has at Texas. He's making guys miss in the backfield. He's catching the ball, sometimes snagging it with not always the most accurate passes. No offense to Rocky Lombardi and others that played with him, but Garrett Schrader. Because their passing attack is not exactly dynamic, teams really load up to try to stop him, and he refuses to be stopped. So I really like Sean Tucker. But yes, anyone else in the conference you wanted to shout out before we move on?
No, I think I got everybody that I like.
Okay. And that will move us now to the Big 12. No, the Big 10, sorry. That'll move us to the Big 10. Obviously, the Big Ten's made a lot of noise and news recently with what's going on with them making additions and moves and things like that. But tell me what you think of the conference and who are some of your favorite players.
Yeah, so obviously, in the media, it's all about USC, UCLA moving to the conference and that new Big Ten TV deal, right? But that's going to be a couple years away. And right now, it's about who can really take that step up to beat Ohio State. Last year, it was Michigan. But quite frankly, I see that being a fluke. I don't think the Wolverines are going to be poor. I also don't think they're going to be great. Um, with that being said, I want to kick it off with the Buckeyes. And what a roster that they have. Obviously, you're going to have a top 5 pick in C.J. Stroud. Probably a top 10 pick in Jackson Smith and Jimba. But Marvin Harrison Jr. is an absolute stud on that team. And having Travion Henderson, a guy that's not draft eligible, who is a true sophomore, and in the backfield, offensively, they are going to be unstoppable. They are replacing a lot of players because of the draft, right? 2 wide receivers left, a bunch of guys on the O-line left, the tight end left. But when you have those core pieces, I don't really see them having a fall off, especially with the program that Ryan Day is running. But in that conference in general, a couple guys I really like is Taulia Tagovailoa. Maryland has had a major turnaround under Mike Locksley compared to where they were in years past. Obviously, when DJ Durkin took over from Randy Edsall, I hope I pronounced his name right. They were a former UConn coach. They were in a state district pair. Obviously, Durkin got fired after one of his players unfortunately passed away during conditioning drills. And they were just in a place of where do we go as a program, as a culture, as a university at this point, from being just a basketball school. Last year, they made a bowl game, routed Virginia Tech in it. Taulia Tagovailoa is definitely a guy to watch out for as he continues on his journey. He's not an NFL caliber quarterback. I'll make that very clear. But as for a college quarterback, he does a lot of things right, and he provides a winning attitude to that program that they really haven't ever had. So that's a guy I definitely want to keep an eye out for. One of my favorite running backs, so unfortunately got hurt in the season opener last year, Mohamed Ibrahim. He's coming back out of Minnesota. When you talk about a guy that can get you yards when needed, he was running all over that Buckeyes defense. The question was he good or was the Buckeyes run game that bad? Because they were exposed in other games as well. I'm gonna go with what I first said, that he is that good. He's a hard-nosed runner that can make excellent cuts, and once he's gone, he is gone. You might be able to catch him, but he's gonna be close to the end zone. It's very hard to catch him once he accelerates. He kind of reminds me of Isaiah Spiller in that way. He's not gonna be once he's gone, he's not gonna be fully gone, but he's gonna definitely get those much needed yards. He finds the hole, and when he finds it, he explodes out of it. He's confident. He's good with the ball. He doesn't fumble. And if he's able to come back fully healthy from that devastating injury, I think that's a guy that to keep an eye out for. Other guys out of the Big Ten, I would have to say. I'm gonna kick it to you, Bill, while I think about it, because there's a couple more guys I want to mention.
Sure, that's no problem. Well, I mentioned briefly that I liked some of the players in Indiana, and I won't spend too much time on Indiana since I've already discussed Indiana a little bit. But there's some good players in the conference, and some of them are guys that everyone knows about. So I won't talk too much about the guys that people already know about. But I do think that they have guys that are maybe underappreciated, right? The thing I'm so much known for is the old underappreciated team. And Penn State is going to be really good this year. I almost, got ahead of myself and wanted to predict they'd win the Big Ten. I'm not going to go that far. I am going to predict they'll be playing in the Big Ten championship game. I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten championship game, but I think they're going to be playing in the Big Ten championship game. Yes, I do believe they're going to be that good. They have really figured out something at the safety position. And Jajiel Brown, I think is how it's pronounced, is one of the best safeties in the country. And I think he ends up being a big-time prospect before it's all said and done. People who don't have him in their top 5 safeties, I think are going to eventually sooner rather than later have him in their top 5 safeties. He's athletic. He's smart. Diagnoses things quickly. He's a good tackler. He can make plays on the ball. He can go into the slot if he has to and come down the box if he has to. He's a full-service safety, I guess is the term I would use. He is a full-service safety, and with Jaquan Brisker moving on, he's going to be the man in the back of that Penn State secondary. I like him a great deal. And like I said, I think he's going to have a really big season. 6 interceptions, in which is pretty darn good. So 6 interceptions and a hitter. Like, he's not a finesse guy, but he did get 6 interceptions. So that tells you he's got good ball skills, to go with the fact that he'll come downhill and smack you. The first time they had somebody have both 6 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries, since there was no draft Twitter in those days. So bulletin board Twitter, or no, it's what bulletin board draft bulletin boards, I guess what it was back in those days. Alan Simitas is the last Penn State player to have 6 interceptions and 2 fumble recoveries. He's a playmaker, which is obviously a tremendous football cliche, but it's true. That is what he is. He is a playmaker, and he's going to not get worse. He's going to get better. And I think he's going to be a first-team all-conference guy, and a guy who has a chance to be a first-team All-American this year. Other Big Ten players that I really, really, really like.
I'm a big fan of Sam Laporta coming out of Iowa, tight end.
There you go.
Obviously Iowa has recently become tight end U. Obviously, there's some question marks. Is Notre Dame tight end U? Is other schools tight end U? It's Iowa. Having 2 first-rounders in the same draft kind of cements that legacy alongside George Kittle. I think Laporta is the next guy. I don't really see him being on that Kittle level, but to me, he's an excellent blocker. He understands his assignments well. And when it comes to making the tough catch, he's able to do so, and that's why I like him a lot. Another guy I really like is, it's gonna bug the heck out of me. The quarterback from Purdue.
You're talking about starts with an A. Big kid. I just almost had it. Hold on. Not Austin.
Aiden, right?
Yeah. I almost said Austin, but it's not Austin. It's another A name.
Aiden, right?
Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Aiden O'Connell. Again, I'm not a guy I think is going to go to the NFL and do great things, but under Jeff and Brian Brom's system, he's flourished well. He did have Bell last year. Is Drake Bell his first name, right? Drake. Oh no, David Bell. Sorry,
David Bell. Yeah.
Drake. I don't know Drake Bell is my bad.
Drake Bell is.
That is correct. That's not good. Disregard that. So David Bell, obviously David Bell left. He's now in the Cleveland Browns, but O'Connell has really taken a step up, especially in that game against Tennessee. That's another. The Big Ten, surprisingly, has a lot of quarterbacks that I'm a big fan on. Obviously, O'Connell, I've mentioned Tagovailoa, Sean Clifford. Sean Clifford plays that game against Iowa. Penn State beats Iowa with ease. There's no doubt about that. I really love Casey Thompson at Nebraska. I think that's the perfect fit for him. I've already mentioned C.J. Stroud. So there's so many great quarterbacks in the Big Ten right now. It's almost unbelievable considering where the state of quarterbacks in the Big Ten was 2-3 years ago. So just want to mention those guys real quick to kind of round out my list for the Big Ten prospects.
I'll toss in for my guys. Cameron Allen. Cam Allen is the other safety I really like in the Big Ten. Actually, there's a few safeties. They've got some good safeties in the Big Ten this year. But Cameron Michael Allen, shout out to his mother and father, is a terrific player. 4 interceptions, broke up several passes, 65 tackles, 44 solo tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss. Just productive in every way. He did everything for them. He was, I thought, the best player on that defense, not named Karlaftis, in my opinion, was, the only guy I really loved on that defense, other than Karlaftis, was Cam Allen. And I think that he has a real chance. Once again, probably not a first rounder, but somewhere in the third, I could see him definitely. And once again, it depends how he tests out and things like that. But just had a good all-around season. Did some of everything for that team, and I think the only thing you'd ask more from him is, I don't know, sacks, because he was near the top of everything else, and every other statistic you can have. And you mentioned Iowa, and Iowa obviously is really known for certain positions, but they they have some good defensive backs this year and really every year. Watch out for Jermari Harris. And, once again, just a well-rounded football player. A Chicago kid. I got to see him a little bit when he was in high school. But he's developed so much, both physically and mentally. Went to Montini Catholic, which is not exactly a powerhouse. So maybe that's part of why he flew a little bit under the radar coming out. But just had a tremendous – he's just become so much of what he's become. There's 3 Chicago kids on Iowa's roster, and, come on, get with it, Illinois. These are guys that Illinois certainly could have used. Was academic all-conference, as a high school guy. Once he got to Iowa, saw some action immediately on special teams. Last year, started to show what he could do, and then really established himself in 2021. Had a terrific year last year. Helped to lead a really good defense. Started at corner against Northwestern. He's a guy that I think is a future NFL player. Has a high level of leadership for a young guy. And once again, for those that like, a good size, he's listed at 6'1". He's probably a legitimately 6 feet and 5/8, probably 192 or so pounds. And once again, I mean, like I said, a good tackler, a guy that, had 8 broke up 8 passes, 4 interceptions. That's 12 total passes defense, 22 solo tackles, 34 total tackles. He's not afraid to come down and stick his face in the fan, as they say in the run game. Just a really complete corner. And I like that. I like corners to tackle. So some people are like, that's why Kaiir Elam was a guy that I had trouble really warming up to, is sometimes he's a bit of what my friend James Coburn would call a pacifist. Sometimes he didn't feel like getting involved if it meant having to put your, drop your hips and, really make hard contact. But Jermari Harris is not afraid of that. Anyone else you want to mention before we move on to the Big 12?
Yeah, just one last name, Ches Malusi, running back Wisconsin. He had a very, very solid year last year before he got hurt. And obviously the talk of the town for Wisconsin football is the youngster Braylon Allen, and rightfully so. He is RB1 for a reason. However, Malusi is no scrub. And quite frankly, if Graham Mertz can get it together, it's another quarterback that I like had a really awful 2021. If he can get it together, if the O-line which stays excellent as they normally do, you're going to have arguably the best 1-2 punch in all of college football at the running back position in Allen and Malusi. Malusi is a 5th-round pick, in my opinion, in terms of where he'll go. I think he values more as a 3rd-round pick. I think he's a guy that can give a lot of teams a lot of great help in the running back depth come draft time.
Yep. I could not agree more. And let's talk some Big 12 football.
Big 12. All right. So I'm going to kick it off with big, bad Bijan Robinson, probably my favorite player in all of college football. If you've ever listened to me and Bill talk, I have not stopped talking about this guy since arguably forever. I loved him in 2020, but he was kind of trying to find his way in that running back room with Keontae Ingram and such. Really broke out in the Texas Bowl against Colorado. Last season, had a great start to the season. I was hampered because Steve Sarkisian calls plays like a monkey. And what I mean by that is he literally does not think like a human. He thinks scared. He calls plays scared, and unfortunately, he puts Bijan Robinson in places for him to fail. Bijan Robinson against Louisiana Lafayette was lining up at receiver. He was lining up at the slot. He was getting the ball downfield in open space, and guess what? He wasn't getting tackled because he's such an incredible talent. I expect him to have a phenomenal season this year, and hopefully Sark can fix the way he calls plays because when he gets to space, he's phenomenal. He's not a guy that's going to run people over. He's a guy that's going to juke everybody out. He's almost LaDainian Tomlinson-like in that way because he can run people over if he really wants to, but evading is more of his skill. He can do everything. He can run the football, he can catch the football, play receiver, block, whatever you need, he's there. So definitely he's number one on my list. Continuing on with the Longhorns, Xavier Worthy. Speed and speed. All right. Pretty decent hands. Definitely much more effective in the short passing and running game, getting those yards after catch. But my goodness, a guy that's not touchable. A guy that does have better hands, Jordan Whittington, the other wide receiver from Texas. I love him a lot. Great hands. Um, Not much you can say about him besides he's a solid player. I will be there when you need him. Our defense will have to be Demarion Overshawn. I've been a fan of his for a very long time, Agent Zero. Um, I think he's another second stringer in the NFL, I would say. He's not a great starter, but he's a guy that's going to be a solid backup for many, many years. I could probably bounce around, have like a Jordan Poyer-like career come on later on in his life. Moving on to the rest of the Big 12, I would have to say I'm going to pronounce the name right, Schaefer from Baylor, the quarterback. Blake Shaper. He had a great Big 12 championship game to start out with. Didn't really end as strong as he wanted to. This is a guy that went and won the Big 12 championship and also the Sugar Bowl. Well, not even beginning the season as a starter. Gary Bohannon was a starter. He's going to develop in that great offensive system that helped Zach Wilson become the second overall pick. And that's a guy that I really like as well. Out of the Big 12, got to talk about Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel with Jeff Lebby. That's just a match made in heaven. I think that those guys are really going to pair up and create some great numbers. Obviously, we see it last year at Matt Corral. When Lane Kiffin was out because of COVID against Louisville, Corral was unstoppable with Levy being the main play caller. He's going to have a lot more RPOs, a lot more quick passes, some no-huddle stuff. Things he was used to at UCF. So I don't really see there being that much of a growth period for him. I think he's going to hit the ground running at Oklahoma. I have a couple more, but before I get to those, I'm going to kick it back to you, Bill.
Yeah. No, you can give me a couple more in a second. I'll just mention one quick name. Watch out for Quentin Johnston. Imagine if Michael Pittman Jr. or Drake London had instead found their way to Texas Christian University. That's the kind of player he is. He is a guy who's open when he's covered, big body, long arms, big, strong hands, just a nightmare to try to cover. First team All Big 12 last year. Got the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose honorable mention list. Honorable mention All Big 12 the year before that. And he was, like I said, an utter menace, just an utter and complete menace. Big body. And I mean, the only question is speed. I think he can get up to speed. He's one of those guys that just takes a few, like, he's not one of those guys that, he's immediately going full speed because he's so big. This guy has to build up to it. But he just has, he had 185 yards and receptions against Oklahoma. Oklahoma is still studying that tape, trying to figure out what the heck happened. And he saved his best for the best, right? He didn't do a lot against some team. He had 95 yards against Cal, 113 against West Virginia, 142 against Baylor, and then 185 against Oklahoma. Didn't do anything against some of the other teams they played. So it's clear that there's more in the tank. If he becomes more consistent, he's going to turn into a first-round draft pick. And so that's a guy I would urge you. Big kid, where's number one? You can't miss him. But I would urge you to definitely watch. If you're watching TCU, it won't take you long to figure out who I'm talking about. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we previously mentioned Deuce Vaughn as well. A guy I want to mention real quick is Spencer Sanders out of Oklahoma State. A guy that I think is going to put up a fair amount of numbers. I'm very critical on Mike Gundy because I feel like he's plateaued for the Cowboys. I don't think it's going to get any better. I think last year was the evidence. He's not going to win maybe one more Big 12 championship in his tenure there. He's not going to make the college football playoffs. But that doesn't mean Oklahoma State is a bad team. Not even remotely close. This year, I think they're going to go on. They're going to win another bowl game and continue the success. I just don't see the step up. And the last guy I forgot to mention was Jajiel Billingsley. transferred to Texas from University of Alabama, tight end. Being able to leave that Nick Saban system, kind of free himself up a little bit. I think he's gonna grow. I think he's gonna grow as a player. I don't know if he's gonna be there in his maturity. That's kind of a big question mark. But when it comes to being a dominant force on the football field, I think he's gonna be that. Last thing I want to say is that the Texas Raiders, I think, are on the cusp of doing some very, very, very good things. They got a head coach in I believe Joy McGuire, who's deeply rooted within the Texas football high school community. They're going to bring a lot of great recruits. There's some very interesting pieces there at the moment. With that being said, watch out for the Red Raiders 2-3 years down the line.
I agree with a lot of what's stated, and I just want to mention very quickly, watch out for Baylor. Period, obviously. I just think that people have still not quite caught up to how good a team Baylor is. So I think that they're going to be good on both sides of the ball. I think that they're going to be one of the maybe one or two teams in the conference that have legitimately good defenses, and their offense become a little bit better than they were last year. That's trouble. I think that they're going to be breathing down the necks of, whoever you think is the top one or two teams. They're going to be right there with them. I mean, Dave Aranda, right, gets there in 2020, fights through, everything, right? COVID-19, cultural issues, getting rid of guys who were not great fits for what he wanted to do. Underestimate Baylor and regret it later.
Yeah.
Gary Bohannon went to South Florida after getting, beaten out. Tyquan Thornton's gone. Snead transferred. Drew Estrada also, he's with the Texans. So the only person on their roster with a catch was Gavin Holmes, right? So they have a bunch of new faces in the receiving group. Blake Shapen is sort of like a slightly more polished but not quite as athletic version of the aforementioned John Reese Plumlee. Ebner's a Bear. Abram Smith is in New Orleans. Craig Williams is back after being hampered by knee problems last year. And obviously they're going to be good on defense. They lost a lot of players, though. Petrie's gone. Woods is gone. Bernard is gone. Raleigh Chiseda is also gone. So that's your entire starting secondary pretty much gone.
Yeah, exactly. JT Woods, Keelan Barnes, a lot of guys. I forgot to mention a guy I really like. And to me, he's a very undervalued defensive tackle in Siaki Ika for the Baylor.
I was about to mention him next.
Okay, yes. Again, me and Bill always on the same page.
Yep.
Strong guy.
Siaki Ika becomes maybe a fourth, fifth round prospect, unless he tests through the roof. That moves him up some more. And I'm going to throw in Dylan Doyle and Gabe Hall. I think those three guys all help themselves and become, day 3, maybe even day 2, if they have great years and test well. Anybody you want to mention before we move on to the Pac-12?
No, that is everybody that I got.
It's Pac-12 time, my friend. Kick it.
All right, so I want to start off with, we obviously in this offseason, the quarterback transfers have been kind of front stage of things. One of the transfers that's really been under the radar so far is Emory Jones transferred from Florida to Arizona State. Now, Arizona State is in this really weird spot in the program because obviously when they fired Todd Graham, who led Arizona State to great success, almost the best string of success since you can say Erickson or even before then when they almost won the national championship with Jake Plummer. Todd Graham was making Pac-12 championship games, so on and so forth. When they moved on from him, they brought in Herm Edwards. And Herm Edwards has done a fairly decent job, but he also hasn't done a great job. And losing to Wisconsin in the Las Vegas Bowl definitely dampened some of the feelings when it came to Coach Edwards' tenure. Bringing a guy like Emory Jones, a guy who was handpicked by Dan Mullen, right? And Dan Mullen's no scrub when it comes to selecting quarterbacks, helping develop Tim Tebow, the early Cam Newton, Dak Prescott, Kyle Trask, so on and so forth. Jones never really lived up to the hype in Florida. Now he's playing a conference that isn't notorious for the defenses, alongside the fact he's still got that great dual threat ability, and he's entering an offense that is fairly similar to when Jaden Daniels ran. He's not at LSU, and I think Jones is both a better runner and a better passer of the football. So I expect him to do some really good things at Arizona State. Moving on to Arizona, Washington State transfer Jalen DeLora enters the Wildcats. So the Wildcats have been in a really tough spot as of late. I think Arizona beat them or something like that a couple years ago or last year. So just to show what a state of disrepair the program is in, I think DeLora gives them just a nice kick of enthusiasm. I can see him doing some nice things. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he took a big step up last year, especially as a passer, but he did lose some really big weapons. Kyle Phillips, who I was very high on, Greg Dorchich, I'm mispronouncing his name too. Again, I was very high on. Two guys that I drafted in the mock draft that I was laughed at, but that's all right. I'm not bitter about that, even though it's been months since that happened. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a guy that can be a real utility guy in the NFL. Won't be a starting quarterback. Probably won't be a Taysom Hill kind of guy. More of a Cam Newton at this stage in his career kind of guy. Comes in on goal lines, certain packages, but won't really flex out into the tight end special teams position. Will still be a quarterback, mostly used for read option, RPOs, run games, stuff like that. Going to USC, wow, do they have an offense? Obviously, you bring in Williams from Oklahoma to be a quarterback who had a fairly impressive start to his career at Oklahoma. Kind of had an iffy couple games, especially when against Baylor. Finished up strong in the Alamo Bowl against Oregon. You bring in Blitnikoff winner Jordan Addison. On one side, Oklahoma transfer Mario Williams. On the other side, then you have Travis Dye, who transferred from Oregon in the backfield. That's the guy I want to mention, Travis Dye. Now, he is an excellent running back, very undersized. I don't think he's going to be a high pick in the draft, probably 6th or 7th round, if not an undrafted free agent like CJ Verdell. But from the college standpoint, he's going to make plays for them. Catch the football, he can run the football. He played very well throughout his time at Oregon. And the offensive line, I believe, has a combined 50 starts. So he's going to have a lot of opportunities to make plays for the Trojans. Michael Penix Jr. up at Washington. That's another guy that's kind of looking for redemption. Kalen DeBoer, who we mentioned earlier, helped mold Jake Kaner. He's now at Washington. They're a team that, to me, talent-wise, they're not that far away from being competitive, if not a top team in the Pac-12. People forget that they were supposed to represent the Pac-12 in a championship game in 2020. Oh, they only couldn't make it because they got hit with COVID fairly badly. Just because last year didn't work out the way they wanted to doesn't mean that this team isn't still full of talent. And I expect them to have a real big bounce back year. Besides that, I would have to say the last guy I want to talk about is Tanner McKee out of quarterback out of Stanford. Right, that's a guy I know Bill's high on. A lot of guys are high on. He does have that kind of Stanford quarterback pedigree we're seeing now with Davis Mills and we see with John Elway and Jim Plunkett. That pocket passer who's able to make some plays outside the pocket, Andrew Luck, and deliver a nice, strong football. And so just keep an eye out on him. And those are my top guys in the Pac-12 at the moment.
I'm going to go back to Arizona State. And some guys that I have sort of some interest and connection in, and at least one guy I guess you'd have at least some connection to. So I think that I'll start with their defense. They have a good defense, and here's the guys I think they have a really good chance to play at the next level. Merlin Robertson is a linebacker, I think, has a chance to play at the NFL level, and pretty good. Nessa Jade Silvera, defensive lineman, I think is an NFL prospect. But here's a guy who, of course, as you know, transferred in from Hawaii, and Corey Bethley, who is one of those sort of hybrid linebacker / strong safety types, and he's probably only about 5'9" 3/4. I call him a very poor man's Bob Sanders. He's not as explosive or as athletic, but he's a thickly built guy who, comes with very, very bad intentions. And, he can probably cover a little better than most people think of when they think of a box safety or hybrid safety type, but I like him a lot. And I think he's wildly underrated.
Yeah.
And then on offense, a Chicago kid that I got to watch at Brother Rice High School, Xavier Valladay. And once again, if he's not in your top 10 running backs, what are you doing? I maybe it's just because he was killing it in Wyoming and people don't care about Wyoming. But now that he's in the Pac-12, maybe that'll be what it takes to catch people's attention. He is a really good running back. Good speed, powerful, not huge, but probably about 5'11 and a quarter, probably about 201 pounds, big enough. He and Ulysses Bentley are, to me, like two of the most underrated running back prospects in this draft class. And they can do a little bit of everything at a high level, and they have enough speed. Bentley probably a little faster than Valladay, but Valladay may be a little stronger. But I like them both a great deal, and I don't understand why people aren't talking about them more.
Sorry, let me just interrupt. I just have to agree on Corey Bethley. Like, Corey Bethley leaving Hawaii broke my heart so much. I kind of blocked out the fact that he transferred to Arizona State. Not the only Hawaii defender to transfer to the Pac-12 or just to the West Coast in general. Darius Musa, linebacker, he went to UCLA, and Justice Tavai went to San Diego State. And also Jonah Ulu went to Oklahoma. Left side of the point. Bethley's a guy that can find the football in so many different ways. And when he ran Todd Graham's 3-3-5 defense, or sorry, not Todd Graham's, he ran Corey Batum's 3-3-5 defense, he was the prototype hybrid linebacker that you were looking for. A guy that can play that kind of quick safety role, a guy that can play in coverage, and a guy that can rush the quarterback. I think that there's a great NFL feature for him. I don't know if he's going to get drafted. I think he's going to be a UDFA. If he lands in a place like the Patriots, or some place that can kind of utilize his strengths, he's going to have a long NFL career. Because if you look back at his time in Hawaii's biggest victories, he's there. Beating Zach Wilson and BYU in the Hawaii Bowl, game-winning interception. Beating Fresno State, multiple interceptions. Just Hawaii wins in general, interception, fumble recovery, forced fumble. Just want to throw that out there for people that haven't watched this game. That man knows how to find the football and take the football, and I expect him to have that level of success at Arizona State as well.
Yeah. For those who were looking for like an NFL comp, a slightly more athletic version of Chuck Clark, who plays for the or even a little bit of Tony Jefferson. Something about those Raven safeties. He might be a future Raven. I'll have to put him on my friend Matt's radar. He feels like those Raven safeties, right? I mean, not Ed Reed, but the other safety, the strong, not the free.
Yes. Absolutely. Man can play on line of scrimmage. Man can play in coverage. Man can play in the slot. You know, he can play. He can place him everywhere, and he's a smart pick. So the Ravens probably will select him, knowing their draft history.
Okay. You guys want to mention before we move on to the SEC, where of course everybody spends all their time, but I spend a little bit of my time.
No, I'm ready to go when you are.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of people talk about the SEC because obviously it's a factory, you know, or at least the top few schools are a factory. I mean, they just crank out dudes, the top teams. And there's always talent, you know, everywhere you look, except sometimes at quarterback, frankly, as we talked about. Sometimes the SEC has a little trouble finding quarterbacks. But who are some of your favorite players and, you know, impact transfers and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so definitely I want to kick it off with Alabama, who I have win the national championship. I already mentioned Bryce Young, and obviously everyone knows Will Anderson. A guy that's definitely getting love is going to be Henry To'oTo'o. Obviously played Alabama last year, transferred to Tennessee. Great middle linebacker, great physically, but what people don't talk about is his mental game. That man is intelligent. When you talk about a guy that can make the correct calls in various situations, especially high-pressure situations, that's him. And I expect him to improve. Cameron Latu, tight end, definitely a guy I would say you got to watch out for. Not going to be a high draft pick, probably fall to the fifth, more likely sixth or seventh, but can provide some value to an NFL team. With that being said, moving on in the conference, I'm really high on is Jermari Richardson, safety out of Texas A&M. Just love his game. He's a guy that can find the ball a lot, and he's great at reading routes of receivers and capitalizing on situations. I've already said my big quarterback statement, which is I think the majority of the quarterbacks in the SEC are overrated. I've already talked about Will Levis, Hendon Hooker, KJ Jefferson. I don't think much needs to be said. He's just a big arm with a big body. Kind of like a bigger De'Aaron King is my best comp for him. There's times you just say, "Oh, Treylon Burks, you're over there. go get it, right? He's not a guy that's going to be able to really make all the reads and then make great decisions on a consistent basis. However, I do think Arkansas will have a great year. Other guys out of the SEC, I would have to say uh, Max Johnson. I think is going to surprise a lot of people at Texas A&M if he gets a starting nod. He had a very underrated time at LSU because of just the turmoil the program was in. But let's not disregard the fact he won at Florida in the swamp when Florida had Trask, Pitts, Marco Wilson, Kadarius Toney, and all the other players they had on that great team. He beat Florida the next year as well behind Terrion Davis Price's incredible day. He beat A&M in Ed Orgeron's final game in the Bayou. So that's a guy I think that's going to flourish at Texas A&M. Jaden Daniels at LSU. Obviously, we just found out that Miles Brennan is retiring from football. He's a guy that can make plays with his leg. Doesn't have the greatest of arms, but he's also having a great wide receiver room led by Bhutan, who I have been high on for a long time. Excellent route runner. To me, he's like the next evolution of the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I don't think he's on those guys' level, but he definitely has some of the potential to be those guys. And I think he's gonna have a great breakout year. I think I covered everybody I liked so far. Probably a couple more will come to me later.
Yep.
But as far as the SEC goes, yeah, those are my main top guys.
So I think Mississippi State upsets somebody, and I'll have to really study their schedule to figure out who they upset. But they're going to upset somebody that people don't think they're going to beat. They're going to beat. Mississippi State isn't loaded. They're a 2.5 to 3-star program. They get the occasional 4-star.
Yes.
Obviously, they lost their leading receiver, Mekhi Polk. Malik Heath has transferred to Ole Miss. And Jane Wally, however, is really talented. And watch out for him to have a breakout season.
Will Rogers is a gamer, though, and that's a guy I like.
Will Rogers is a gamer. He's probably a backup at the next level, but watch out for Jaden Wally. He was a freshman All-American in the past. I think he's more talented than Mekhi Polk. Not as polished as him, but just a junior. I think he's a true junior. But he's a guy who's got okay size. He's not huge, but he's a better athlete than most of the Mississippi State receivers in the past have been guys who were, 4.54, 4.56, 4.57, mid 4.5s. This guy's not. And he's a better athlete than those guys. I think that he has a chance because he's more athletic. And like I said, he's in an offense that clearly gives you a lot of opportunities to be developed as a receiver. I think that, the season he had last year was certainly a solid one. Comes off a good true freshman season, has even better sophomore season. But I think, last year he had 55 catches and I think 628 yards in receiving, something like that. Also rushed for a few. Obviously they don't, no one's really featured in the running game, but they don't do a lot with their receivers in the running game. But had 6 touchdowns, and they don't throw the ball deep that much. But he has a long of 51 in his career, and a lot of times, even when a guy has 51 or 38 or whatever, a lot of that's run after catch. But he's capable of getting deep on people. He has the stuff. I think that this is a breakout year. I think he becomes a 1,000+ yard receiver this year. Other guys that I think are worthy of mention: Nathan Pickering, the defensive tackle. Pencil him in for a guy that pushes his way into the top 100, 120 to 120, 120-ish, 100 to 120-ish range. I like Emmanuel Forbes. I think he turns himself into once again a top 100 to 150 prospect. So they've got some guys. And then last but not least, I mentioned 2 more. I think Jalen Green is one of the top 4 safety prospects in the SEC. I like Nathaniel Watson. Their best pass rusher is Randy Charlton. Oh, their best exterior pass rusher, I should say. I really like, actually, what Pickering does as a pass rusher. He had 9 sacks playing defensive tackle. So he might be their best pure pass rusher, even though he's an interior guy. Jaquavius Marks, is Oh, you saw what guys like Max Borghi, and other. Look at what those guys did at Washington State. He kind of does that for them. 728 yards rushing, which is a lot for Mississippi State. Jet Johnson is also a really good linebacker. Led the team in tackles with 87, had 6 tackles for loss, and also an interception, 4 passes broken up. He's a player. So, yeah, I like him. Those are all guys that I like at Mississippi State. Anyone else you thought of that you wanted to mention?
I totally forgot to mention him during my Alabama speech. Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback.
Kool-Aid, yeah.
Yeah. One, great name. Secondly, great player. Dude rarely gets burnt. He's a smart, intelligent player. He's just very young. That's the only knock against him. I think he's going to take a great step up. I do believe Nick Saban, when he said last year was rebuilding year, because the way you look at the way Alabama operated last year compared to how they normally operate, it was a complete rebuild. They didn't really have a great RB1. Yeah, they had Bijan Robinson Jr., who exploded in the semifinal against Cincinnati, but there wasn't that Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram type of player there. So definitely I expect him, Kool-Aid McKinstry, as well as Alabama to have a great year this year. Jabari Small, running back out of Tennessee, he definitely saw a drop-off when he wasn't on the field last year. I think he'll come back in that no-huddle offense, be strong, and be Hendon Hooker's safety valve when he starts getting rattled and starts chucking balls to the end zone, hoping and praying. Again, a lot of the company out of Georgia. Oh my! Everyone wants to talk about Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame as being tight end 1. Lad McConkey, I think, is going to be coming. I think he's tight end 1, honestly. Nothing against Mayer. Big body, great blocker, can catch the football and make plays in open space. You want to talk about an animal? McConkey is an animal. He will moss you all day of the week. He's almost like the Caucasian tight end version of George Pickens, right? He does not care. He will hurt you, and he will have fun hurting you. And I really love him a lot. I think he's going to have a great year. He might fall in the draft because obviously the way the tight end position is valued, the hype on Michael Mayer, and the fact, yes, that's embedded as his quarterback, which means Georgia typically runs a run-based offense. Whoever picks a guy like him up is going to have an absolute stud at that position.
Agreed. Let's talk about the season overall. Give me a surprise team, a team people aren't talking about that fights its way into the top 25 or maybe in the top 20, and then give me a team that people are too high on, that people have maybe in the top 10 or 15 or 20 that you think doesn't deserve to be that high.
Gotcha. Real quick before we do that, I forgot one last name. Ted Bigsby, Auburn. Great running back. He's going to have a great year. Probably overused because that's the only offensive threat Auburn has, but just wanted to mention him. So a team that I think is going to surprise a lot of people, make their way into the top 25, possibly even the top 20, possibly even further, is Washington State. I am a big fan of the Cougars. I think Jake Dickert has that team ready to roll, bringing in the offensive coordinator from Incarnate Wood alongside the quarterback Cameron Ward, who we're all very high on, can make all the throws on different platforms, very athletic as well. Playing up in Pullman is no joke, especially come winter time. But he already played at Incarnate Wood, so he's kind of used to that climate already. When you look at the Pac-12, there's USC, there's Oregon, there's Utah, and then there's kind of everybody else. And even Oregon, USC, and Utah are not necessarily great. Sorry. Also forgot to add Tavion Thomas, Utah, great running back. I think he's going to have a stud year as well. But with that being said, Washington State has a great kind of home field advantage. They're not going to have a lot of great teams to face up against, so they're going to start to stack up wins. I don't think Washington is there yet. I think they're going to go back-to-back in the Apple Cup, and that's a team I really can see breaking into the top 25, possibly even top 20, possibly even further. I'm not saying college football playoffs. I'm not saying New Year's 6. I'm saying possibly top 15 and a respectable bowl appearance.
Okay. My surprise team is Fresno State. As you mentioned earlier, they have a lot of really good players, particularly on offense. But they have some players on defense, too. They're not just an offensive team. And people sometimes get that in their heads. I mean, Jalen Cropper is someone – he's my dark horse to win the Biletnikoff Award. I'm a huge fan of Jalen Cropper. And obviously he and Jay Kaner have that whole Vulcan mind meld, my mind to your mind thing, where they can just look at each other and change a play. Okay, that was originally going to be a dig route. I'm converting it to a comeback just because you looked at me a certain way. I mean, they really understand each other so well. And Cropper is wildly underrated. I do not know why people don't talk about him more. I do not know why people don't have him more highly rated. He's in my top 5. I think that there's a couple of higher prospects. I mean, obviously Smith and Jigba is a beast and Butte is a beast. But beyond that, who else is really better than Cropper? To me, not many people. But I just think that Fresno State has a team that's set up to win. They may end up. We talked about the conference. They might not win the conference, but they're going to be right there. I think they're going to have no more than 1 or 2 losses. And they're going to beat a big team. That's my other prediction. They're going to beat somebody, right? They're going to one of those games they play up, they're going to beat them. They're going to beat somebody. They're going to beat one of those name brand teams. So that's one of the teams that I think people should have an eye on. And they're going to put some guys in this draft. There's some talent on this team. So that's why I picked them as my surprise team. And I just think that there's a lot to like about this team. I mean, you mentioned Tedford, and he's a legend for a reason. But I think the difference between this year and last year's team is going to be on the other side of the ball, quite frankly. I think it's going to be about defense that ends up being the thing that tilts it for them this year. I mean, obviously, Tedford's work with David Carr, Trent Dilfer, Joey Harrington, Akili Smith, and Aaron Rodgers,
And Lane Kiffin. It's a fun fact.
Yes.
When Kiffin was at Fresno State.
Yes. Right. Good point. Hainer, as you mentioned, almost transferred. Came up very close to 4,100 yards last year. I think he's over 4,200 yards this year. I like Josh Kelly a great deal, who's their number 2 receiver. They do lose Ronnie Rivers, but Jordan Mims is actually a better athlete. Not as fully, doesn't do everything as well. He's not as good in blitz pickup and things like that, but he's a better pure speed guy, obviously. Donete Bull is a really good really good. Solid left tackle. They get an impact transfer at guard from Jacob Isiah. There it is. Isiah. Jacob Isiah from Michigan State comes in. The defense allowed 21 points per game and 347 yards. I think they improve on both those numbers. They lose Aaron Mosby. They lose Kevin Atkins. But they bring back David Perales, who I think is one of the best pass rushers in the conference. Leonard Payne comes back on the interior. He's about 315 or so pounds. Joshua Picola transfers in from Stanford. I think he's going to see the field early and often. Evan Williams is one of the best safeties, maybe the number 3 or 4 safety, but they've got good safeties in Mountain West. He's in somewhere in that top 3 or 4. And Malachi Langley and Lavelle Bailey should be good. And Raymond Scott transfers in from USC. So there's some dudes, I guess is what I'm saying. And yes, like you, I'm a huge Hainer guy. I've heard him compared to everybody from Baker Mayfield to I've heard him compared to Drew Brees. A lot of basically any smaller quarterback he gets compared to. I don't hate those comparisons. I think he's better than some of the people he's been compared to and not as good as some of the other people he's compared to. But when I watch him and when I see who he is and what I think he might be able to become, I could see him being sort of like a shorter version of a guy like Chad Pennington, but he has a slightly liver arm. And Pennington had a decent arm before all the surgeries. People only remember the last version of Chad Pennington. There was an earlier version of Pennington who had a pretty decent arm, actually. But he's, transferred in from Washington. Washington probably wishes they never lost track of him, but he lights it up. Cropper had 1,615 yards. Once again, helped me to win that college football fantasy championship I won last year because he had 16 touchdowns. And also tossed in another 43 carries for 446 yards. I mean, he was stupidly productive. I mean, over 2,000 yards and yards from scrimmage. That's awesome. Evan Williams is really good. 5 tackles, for loss, 4 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. All Mountain West guy in his 3 years there at Fresno. Perales is a guy I think is a borderline draft pick guy. 2 years as many all-conference. Probably goes off for about 7.5 or 8 sacks this year, even though he's being targeted. I mentioned Josh Kelly and Lavelle Bailey. I think of those guys, I think probably the guy with the best chance to Kelly becomes a really solid number 2, but people try to take away Cropper. I think Bailey is a good coverage linebacker. Mims takes over as the main running back. Watch out also for Cam Lockridge.
Yes, Hawaii transfer.
Yeah, right. Obviously, Hawaii transfer, yes. But watch out for Cam Lockridge. You know about Cam Lockridge. I don't know if America knows enough about Cam Lockridge. I think he plays himself into being, if he declares, I think he's just a junior, but if he declares, he becomes a day 3, depending on how he tests, to borderline day 2 prospect. And I think he maybe becomes their best coverage corner. Decent size, a guy that obviously, as you know, can be a playmaker, a Tampa kid, right? Grandson. This makes me feel stupid old, but a grandson of Ken Griffey Sr. and a nephew of Ken Griffey Jr. Basketball, baseball, can play wide receiver. Good at just from Reedley College, right? The same place that gave us Josh Allen, but became the best corner at Hawaii, and now I think has a chance to be the best corner, and has 2 years eligibility remaining. So I think he has a big season this year. Anyone else you want to mention before we close out the show? Oh, okay. One last question. Oh, yeah. Say what you're going to say, and then I have one last question.
No, it's all good. Go ahead.
So give me who you think will be in the Final Four and why.
Now, this is very tough. But my top 4 is going to be at number 1, Alabama, for obvious reasons. But frankly, I don't see a team in the SEC stopping them. I think the team that has the biggest shot is Georgia and Texas A&M. I don't see A&M beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa this year. I just don't see it. Or do I see them beating them twice in one season? Actually, sorry, they wouldn't play twice because they're the same division. So I don't see them beating them in Tuscaloosa. So that means that another team would have to beat Alabama and then twice. They have to lose twice for them to win the division, so on and so forth. I don't see that happening. I think Georgia has the best shot. I just think that after all the talent that they lost last year, they haven't replaced them properly. They have replaced them, and they will be a great program. I just think Alabama is just a cut above, so I have them at number 1. And number 2, Ohio State, for obvious reasons, like I mentioned. Offensively, top 2 quarterback in the college football, probably a top 10 running back in Trayvon Henderson, if not top 5. To me, personally, top 3. Top 3 wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jimba. Marvin Harrison Jr., who is an excellent player. Brian Hartline is arguably one of the best recruiters in the nation, if not the best recruiter in the nation. Great wide receivers coach, and also just great recruiter for Ryan Day. So I have them at number 2, alongside the fact they're not really playing a difficult Big Ten compared to last year. I don't see who's going to challenge them. At number 3, I have the USC Trojans, for the sheer fact of they have ability to outscore opponents. And that's it. I'm not saying they're going to be a great force this year. I just think Lincoln Riley just knows how to make college football playoff by being effective offensively, and they got the tools to do so. Again, top 3 wide receiver, top 10 quarterback, a very impressive wide receiver room, an O-line that has over 50 combined starts, and just a great recruiting class in general. And my number 4 is going to be the Baylor Bears, for reasons we already mentioned. Dave Aranda, as a defensive mind, is probably the best in the nation, without even a doubt. Everyone wants to talk about the great defensive coordinators, guys like Jim Knowles, who went up to Ohio State, and what's his name? The guy the DC at Miami, not Phil Steele, but is it Phil Steele? No, that's the other guy.
Phil Steele. He's a publisher of the.
Yeah, he's a publisher.
Shout out to Phil Steele, who I follow and he follows me. I have my copy, Phil. I will feature it on our next show of your amazing publication.
Gotcha.
But
he's the last DC at Auburn. Now he's at Miami. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know you're talking.
Right, and then you've got good Brett Venables, like these great defensive minds, right? Coordinators getting paid multi-millions dollars, right? Aranda to me is just on another level. He showed at LSU, showed at Baylor, he showed at Hawaii. That's a fact that people don't talk about. Look at his work at Hawaii, and look what he did against Colin Kaepernick and Chris Oates' pistol offense. The only reason Nevada had a single loss that year is because Aranda is a defensive genius, and because of that, especially with the offense that they have, I think Baylor is going to take the number 4 spot in the college football playoff.
Okay, I love that. And I would like to go. I think Baylor ends up playing Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma ends up escaping, but narrowly, with a victory. So I do have Oklahoma in there. I have Ohio State in there because I think they win the Big Ten. I have, well, I mean, Alabama sort of by law, I guess you have to have in your college football playoff. And I'm going to go Ohio State, but I think they lose a game, and I think the loss they pick up this year is to Penn State. I think they're a one-loss team. I think it's Penn State beats them. I think Penn State is that team that's on the outside looking in, complaining that they should be in. I think they're like the number 5 with a bullet, trying to sort of knock on the door and get in.
I think James Franklin's looking at his contract, asking, "How did this happen?" That's how I feel about the Nittany Lions.
I think they end up being a really good team this year. I just have a feeling about Penn State this year.
Fair.
But obviously, Michigan and going to be in the mix. I just think Michigan has a bit of a dip this year. I think it's Ohio State, but I think they get a scare. And maybe, like I said, one loss this year from Penn State. But they still get in. They only have one loss. They still get in. They win the conference. So I have Clemson is the other team that I've been thinking about putting in there. I think Clemson wins the ACC. But I have a feeling that people have lost a little bit of respect for the conference as a whole. That's one thing that worries me, because they might literally run the table and still end up on the outside looking in. I don't see too many teams that can beat them this year. The only team that really scares me, well, I mean, Carolina will still be good, and then NC State will be very good. But will either of them be highly regarded enough that beating them will do enough for Clemson is my only concern. Will people respect those wins enough? Florida State will be better, but, they're still not, Florida State of old. Miami will be maybe not.
A run-dominant offense with a really good quarterback.
Right.
Where have we seen that before at Mario Cristobal?
Sure. Right. Exactly. Yes. Where have we seen it? But I think they end up around 9-3. That might be the one win that Clemson picks up that people respect, really, might be beating a ranked Miami team. So that's what the thing that's been bothering me is figuring out what will happen. I think to me that maybe it's Clemson, Penn State are those like next two teams on the outside looking in. Anything else you want to tell us about that you're working on or stuff you're planning or anything else that you want to plug, Brock?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This has been a lot of fun for our first episode. Can't wait to do many, many, many more. I recently launched up my top 10 of the top 100 Hawaii Warriors of all time. That's going to be leading up to Hawaii's opener at Vanderbilt. So go check that out. I will be releasing 11 through 20 tomorrow, and then obviously in the days to come, 20, 30, 30, 40, so on and so forth. I also like to do a nice little biography of each player to really recognize and honor their time in Manoa. So check that out, alongside the fact that I have some great YouTube videos up. Some of them featuring the great Bill Carroll. There's when we talked about the life and legacy of Eddie Robinson. We did a recap of the draft. We talked about the quarterbacks more in depth in college football this year. And then we just had an interview with just him in general, talking about football, life, and all that great stuff. I also have an interview with Last Chance U's Dior Scott. So other great football players either played in the CFL, XFL, arena football, so on and so forth. Go check that out. Besides that, if you guys want to read some great articles, go at midnightsportstoday.org, and you can follow me on Twitter, MNSToday. I love chopping it up with you guys, talking sports. Whether we agree or disagree doesn't matter. I just love talking about sports and having mutual respect with other great sports fans.
Sure. If you'll check Nothing But Sports, you'll see that we're doing all of our NFL previews. I previewed the Texans, and I also previewed the Jaguars. You can find those on Nuts About Sports. I am working on my conference previews, which will also show up soon on Nuts and Bolts Sports. The problem is I keep overwriting. So I have to try to find a way to shrink those down so that they'll fit within our length guidelines. Then you'll be seeing some of the stuff that I do also on Zitty62 Sports Media. The videos will pop up there, as well as stuff I do for, like I said, the aforementioned Nuts and Bolts, and my long form articles, including a novel that I've written about the Washington Commanders' relationship with the Black community of Washington and how they could have chosen some better possible name options. I will have to make that shorter. It's embarrassingly long, but they don't mind long form. But I think this would be too much even for Around the Block Sports. But eventually, I'll cut it down enough that it'll shop before the season. That's what I'll say. I make a commitment that I'll get it done before the season begins. So less than a month away. You'll see that on Around the Block Sports. Once again, Brock Viera of Midnight Sports Today. It's been a real pleasure, a real privilege, and an honor. We will get to do this every week throughout football season, and then we'll do some stuff for bowl season. And if you'd like to get credentialed, we'll talk about some of the All-Star games and other games that you may want to cover. So we'll get into that as we talk about your future, young man. But once again, I thank you so much for joining me. Your talent, your time, and your attention is tremendously appreciated. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and thank you, everyone who watches and listens.
Right.